Chapter 1073. However, the challengers were still coming in an endless stream. What if Yun Yang and Shi Wuchen were the only experts in residence of 9 Supremes? What if they were already exhausted and no longer as valiant as before? However, Luo Dajiang and the others did the same, wiping out the challengers' sects in 2 or 3 moves. For a moment, residence of 9 Supremes had a winning streak and was the best in the field. Yun Yang sat in the tent with his eyes slightly closed, not saying a word. It was as if his mind was wandering and he had forgotten about everything around him. In fact, he was feeling the peculiar atmosphere of the air of karma that kept flying in, and there were many thoughts in his mind. The current accumulation of the air of karma was unprecedentedly thick and strong. Usually, the number of martial artists outside was at most 100 ordinary villains in Tianshan continent, even if it was a considerable number. But in this realm the weight was obviously much higher. It seems that these fellows have done a lot of evil things when they set up their sections. The bound of universe still has its restrictions, or perhaps the people in the sects have long found a way to deal with and avoid it. Yun Yang watched as the clouds of karmic energy flew in and Emmy absorbed them in the space, chirping in delight. What's going on today? Why is there such a rich harvest? Aya, it turned out that Yun Yang was right. From the beginning of the Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner, the night was still dark and almost nothing could be seen. It was not until they had fought a dozen sects in a row that the sky began to brighten slightly. Of course, it was also because Yun Yang, Shi Wuchen, and the others were so powerful that they killed their opponents in a few moves, so the time was naturally shorter. However, after the dozen rounds of battles, residents of 9 Supremes had not lost a single person, and they had easily defeated their opponents in each battle. The latecomers no longer dared to take advantage of this situation. Instead, they wanted others to go first while they waited. After all, the corpses that had been piled up like a mountain next to residents of 9 Supreme Station were shocking to the eye. How could they not be afraid? Although they had thought that the residents of 9 Supremes must have some tricks up its sleeves for being so arrogant, who would have thought that the residents of 9 Supremes would be so ferocious? Just when the latecomers were hesitant and no one dared to challenge them directly, the residents of 9 Supremes sent out their young disciples to accept the challenge. They were all little girls and young boys, so young and immature that they could not help but grow bolder. Go. Kill them all. Break the residents of 9 Supremes' wings. The first to fight were Yun Xiaoxin and Lu Changman, the first and last among the top 10 disciples. Naturally, it was the first time for both of them to face such a battle where they were outnumbered. Therefore they behaved very cautiously at the beginning, holding back their strength to be safe. But as the fight went on they found, what kind of sect was this? They were simply too weak. Even if it wasn't as easy as flipping one's hand, it was still very simple. The so-called elders and sect masters of the opposing sect were probably even weaker than the dozens of junior brothers and junior sisters who had yet to come out of the sect. How could they even be worth mentioning? They exchanged a glance, and as soon as their thoughts were confirmed, their confidence soared. Then they no longer held back and began to kill. Their sect leader had said that they would not leave anyone alive. The battle lasted less than a quarter of an hour, and the sect they were facing was already cleaned up. Furthermore, this was because the two of them didn't dare to go all out, which was why the battle had been delayed. However, the two little fellows' behavior after the battle was over was a little biased. Instead of cleaning up the battlefield, they began to vomit. They were still young after all, and it was fine for them to focus on the battle just now. But now, looking at the mountains of corpses and seas of blood they had created, they could not help but feel worried. The visual and psychological impact was very serious, and it made the two little fellows vomit all over the place. Even when the second battle was over and Bai Yexing and Duanmu Feng returned, they were still vomiting. Bai Yexing and Duanmu Feng's reaction was much better than Yun Xiaoxin's. They were just a little pale but nothing else. In the third battle, Hu Xiaofan and Meng Qianshan returned. Meng Qianshan's face was also pale, but Hu Xiaofan looked as if nothing had happened. It was as if he had done something very ordinary and insignificant. Round after round of battles were over. By the time it was early morning, residents of 9 Supremes had defeated and destroyed 23 groups of sects that came to challenge them, and none of them were injured or killed. This achievement was secondary. The key was that the efficiency of annihilating the enemy was too shocking. It was eye-catching and soul-stirring. In fact, it was an exaggeration to say that no one in residence of 9 Supremes was injured, because after the battle Yun Xiaoxin, Lu Changman, Lin Xiaoro and Qing Jejia huddled together and vomited. Their limbs were sore and their combat strength was not fully recovered, so it was more accurate to say that they were slightly injured. While frowning at this, Yun Yang made an arrangement that seemed a little unreasonable. Seeing that another sect had come to challenge them, Yun Yang ordered Yun Xiaoxin and Lu Changman to fight again. He also made it clear that there would be no rest after this battle, and the two of them would fight the next group of sections. They would come back to rest when they stopped vomiting. Of course, if they were killed by the enemy, they could rest forever. This method of fighting poison with poison turned out to be very effective. The effect was immediate and remarkable. After 3 rounds of battles, although Yun Xiaoxin and Lu Changman's faces were pale, their foreheads were drenched in cold sweat, and their stomachs were uncomfortable, they had gradually overcome this negative feeling and stopped vomiting. Seeing that their condition had improved, Yun Yang replaced them with Cheng Jiejia and Lin Xiaoro. Cheng Jiejia and Lin Xiaoro's psychological quality was even worse than Yun Xiaoxin and Lu Changman's. After 4 rounds of battles, they still could not help but vomit. When they fought the 5th round, although they won, they were already flustered, but Yun Yang still forced them to continue the battle. In the next 2 rounds, the crowd saw the 2 female disciples in danger several times, and some were even slightly injured, but Yun Yang was still indifferent and insisted on his original intention. Even Kong Luoyue's rescue was intercepted by Yun Yang. No one is allowed to intervene. Do you think what I said before was just a joke? Either you kill all the enemies and return in triumph, and you're not allowed to vomit anymore. Or you'll be killed and sleep forever and we'll collect your body. There are only these 2 ways. If they make a mistake and are killed because of their soft-heartedness, that's their fate, and it's none of our business. Fortunately, although Cheng Jiejia and Lin Xiaoro were surrounded by danger, they still defeated the enemies again and again. Covered in blood, they stood in the residence of 9 Supremes' camp again, and their faces had turned from pale to cold. In such a short time, the 2 girls had quickly completed their transformation. Although they were not cold-blooded, they had become cold-hearted. The sun was high up in the sky. Yun Yang, Shi Wuchen, and the others were sitting in the tent drinking tea leisurely. It was because there were only 10 disciples guarding outside, and it was more than enough for Yun Xiaoxin to arrange the formation to fight against the challenging sections. You're the eldest senior sister, and this is your responsibility. You'll command and arrange the formation. You won't? It doesn't matter. You've commanded wrongly and it's your responsibility if they die. It's your incompetence that killed them. At this moment Yun Xiaoxin was extremely nervous. Her heart was in her throat at all times, and her little face was taut. She was so serious and cautious that she was almost sick. Carefully observing every enemy that came to invade, calculating the strength of every person from every sect, then comparing them with their own junior brothers and sisters, then making the most exquisite and most meticulous arrangements. Boss, you're pushing too hard. Shi Wuchen felt a little sorry for her. The martial world is the most ruthless. If you want to grow as fast as possible, you can only go through the most extreme pressure and training. If we push them now, even if we make some mistakes, the strength of these sects is obviously weaker than Yun Xiaoxin and the others. Even if they are in danger, they can still turn the situation around. But if we don't take advantage of this atmosphere to train something, when we face the expert sects in the future, that will be the real loss. When that time comes, it's not something we can control. Yun Yang's eyes were full of certainty. He was sure that his method was correct. Perhaps for Yun Xiaoxin the process was too cruel, but it was something she had to go through. The martial world was a cruel place, and it would not allow one to carefully protect it like cultivating heaven and earth treasures in a greenhouse. She could train it, she could train it. If she couldn't, she could only be replaced by the latecomers. After all, it was her own incompetence that had nothing to do with others. Yun Yang's judgment was obviously accurate and without the slightest mistake. Among the sects competing with residents of 9 Supremes, there was really no one whose strength could compare to it. In this realm, no matter how infuriated the residents of 9 Supremes had been, it was not just one sect fighting against all the other sections. In fact, many sects in every direction of this realm were fighting against each other with all their might, fighting to the death. This was the truest portrayal of the battle for the Celestial Luck Banner. Otherwise, how could there be enough time for more than 500 sects to fight each other in just 3 days? The Celestial Luck Banner. The object that symbolized the qualification for the Celestial Luck Banner was hovering in the sky above this realm. It was also because of its existence that all the sects and people present were fighting for it. In just a short morning, the square was already covered with blood and battle cries were deafening. More than 50 sects had disappeared from this realm forever. So many people are dying in this realm just for a qualification. Is it really worth it? Besides, even if they get the qualification, they may not be able to defeat those who really have the celestial luck. Lan Ruojuan sighed with mixed emotions. This is the celestial luck. Yun Yang's eyes were deep as he said, everyone has the celestial luck, but not everyone really has it. In the face of such a situation, the wisest choice is to stay safe, go home, marry a wife and live the rest of your life away from the martial world. As long as you don't covet the celestial luck and only seek to spend the rest of your life in peace, you can live a peaceful and carefree life. However, if you have the slightest bit of greed and want to be above others, you can only kill your way through the mountains of corpses and seas of blood. In fact, all the sects other than the martial world are like this, no matter which profession it is. This is another interpretation of the saying that different paths lead to the same destination. What we're fighting for now is who the final celestial luck belongs to. Only by seizing the celestial luck will we understand better that different celestial luck is actually different. To obtain a stronger celestial luck, we can only fight again, snatch again, and occupy again. This path will never have an end. Perhaps it's even more profound than the vast martial world. It's truly endless. Listening to Yun Yang's words, Shi Wuchen and the others nodded silently. Kong Luiwe smiled and said, "What you said makes sense, boss, but it's too far in the future. At least for now, the residence of Nine Supreme's ability is undoubtedly unparalleled. Compared to us, these sects are completely incomparable." Yun Yang's eyes were half-lidded as he said faintly, "Our purpose of coming here this time has never stopped at seizing the qualification, but to directly seize the celestial luck. Even with our current ability, we're confident that we can defeat those sects with lower-class celestial luck banners. It'll be abnormal if we encounter a strong opponent in this qualification battle. We should have swept through the first qualification battle. What we're doing now is already too inefficient." Indeed, the residents of Nine Supreme's ability was far beyond their peers. Otherwise, how could Lin Xiaoro and Qing Jejia fight 5 rounds consecutively and win? If Yun Yang and the others attacked separately, it would not be difficult for the residents of Nine Supremes to wipe out 100 sects now. This was the reality, the truest and cruelest reality. By noon, the residents of Nine Supremes had gone through another 25 challenges. When they looked up, the sun was already high in the sky. It was noon. The entire square was filled with the meandering river of blood that flowed like a trickle. The pungent smell of blood was so strong that it made it hard for people to breathe, and their mouths and noses were filled with the smell of rust. However, just as the sun moved to the top of their heads, with a strange whoosh and a surge of white mist, all the corpses, all the blood, and all the traces of battle disappeared in an instant. It was as if those people, the corpses, and the blood that covered the ground had never existed before. Fivefold Peak is magical indeed. Yun Yang sighed softly. Perhaps in the eyes of others, these people might have been resurrected and sent out. In spite of this, Yun Yang understood that those people were indeed dead, dead beyond all possibility of death. The karmic chi that he had obtained could not deceive anyone. It was difficult for the dead to be born if they were not real. The many weapons, resources, and even spatial rings that he had seized were real as well. All of these existed in the hands of the winners. When the sky turned dark in the afternoon, the corpses, limbs, blood, and heads that had been produced once again disappeared strangely. After a day of fierce battles, the number of sects that survived was less than 100. Updated late today. I'm in Hengdian. GT. Chapter 1074. There was more than enough time for the 500 sects to fight for 3 days to decide the winner, but the progress should not have been so fast. Now, however, with the addition of the residents of Nine Supremes, a super powerful sect that almost had a cheat code, they had no opponents and could defeat their opponents in the blink of an eye, which greatly accelerated the process of the qualification battle. It was because of such an atmosphere that, except for the residents of Nine Supremes, all the other sects were injured and so tired that they could almost fall asleep while walking. Originally, the sects were thinking of resting for a night to recover and prepare for the next day. Unexpectedly, at Yun Yang's order, the residents of Nine Supremes took the initiative to attack for the first time. Overnight, more than 60 of the existing sects were destroyed. The route of attack was almost from this end of the square, sweeping all the way. The screams of the dying martial artists rang throughout the night. On the morning of the second day, people from 7 sects took the initiative to leave, their faces ashen. At this point, there were less than 30 sects left in the qualification battle. There were less than 11 sects in this huge square, and they seemed abnormally lonely. All the sects that were slaughtered and those that had withdrawn had their tents disappear as soon as they were defeated. It was even more magical than the disappearing corpses and blood. From beginning to end, Yun Yang had used his divine sense to observe and sense with his manifestation powers, but he did not find any trace of power controlling or presiding over the competition in this realm. It was as if all this had happened spontaneously on this mountain, and had nothing to do with anyone. It seemed to be a little too high level, at least beyond Yin Yang's current understanding. The next afternoon, 30 sects were reduced to 11, and when night fell there were only 6 left. On the third morning, there were only 2 sects left in this realm that had participated in the battle for the Celestial Luck Banner. The residents of 9 Supremes and the Wild Saber sect. The 2 sects confronted each other. The Wild Saber sect had sent a total of 35 people to this qualification battle, but only 17 of them were still alive. 18 of them had been buried here and more than half of them were dead. As for the remaining 17 people, all of them were injured and riddled with scars. They were exhausted to the point that they couldn't even lift their hands. Yun Yang led his disciples out in a single file, watching the other party silently. Compared to the poor state of the Wild Saber sect, the clothes of the residents of 9 Supremes were spotless, as if they had just taken a bath and changed their clothes. Seeing the arrival of the residents of 9 Supremes, feeling their powerful aura and explosive fighting spirit, the leader of the Wild Saber sect laughed bitterly, tears streaming down his face. The residents of 9 Supremes is indeed formidable and impressive. The Mad Blade sect master was a tall and sturdy man. His eyes were filled with nostalgia as he looked at the disciples around him and said, "Our Mad Blade sect for today's battle has endured for 27 years. In the past, when we fought against Kangwu Union, we always had the upper hand. I thought it was expected and reasonable that we could win the Celestial Luck Banner in this battle of celestial luck. Unexpectedly, there's always someone stronger than you." He looked at Yun Yang and said cleanly, "Trying your best is no different from throwing your life away. How foolish. We admit defeat in this battle. Sect leader Yun, you won't be so ruthless, right?" Yun Yang, Shi Wuchen, and the others did not conceal their auras. For the first time, their powerful auras were released in unison. The other party was also a high-level cultivator, so how could he not sense it? With such a huge gap in strength, even if their side did not lose any members and their strength was complete, they would still be far behind. Such a gap could not be made up for by risking their lives. Fighting without any regard for the consequences wasn't just courting death, it was extremely foolish. It was truly a foolish death. "Have a safe journey, everyone." Yun Yang said warmly, "What are you talking about, brother? Our original intention was only for the Celestial Luck Banner. Since the outcome has been decided and you gave up voluntarily, how could we force you too much? When we meet again in the martial world, we'll be friends." He smiled miserably and looked at the huge square with nostalgia. He murmured, "Where the heavenly fate is, where the heavenly fate is." Suddenly he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood and waved his hand. "I admit defeat. Let's go." Before he finished speaking, his tall and sturdy body fell to the ground. His spirit seemed to have completely disappeared at this moment. From today onwards, Wild Saber sect will seal itself for 100 years. I hope that after 100 years, there will still be outstanding people among the later generations, and then we'll have the same thought again. With tears in his eyes, the man from Wild Saber sect left these desolate words and was sent out by the strange power of the 5th peak. At this point, only the people from residents of 9 Supremes were left in the square on the first floor. Yun Yang stood with his hands behind his back, his thoughts distant. After a long time he murmured to himself, "Celestial luck, celestial luck." However, there was a cheer behind him. "We've won." With the forfeit of Wild Saber sect, the qualification battle for the Celestial Luck Banner came to an end. The white fog at the edge of the square finally changed again. Gradually, it rolled and quickly condensed into a path that led upward. A white cloud drifted past Yun Yang and the people from residents of 9 Supremes, as if it was leading the way. Then it slowly drifted forward. Knowing that they had been guided by the strange phenomenon because of their victory, the people from residents of 9 Supremes were all beaming with joy as they walked happily toward the path. Only Yun Yang felt an inexplicable sense of melancholy, but his feet still followed the movements of the people and walked forward step by step. Suddenly, the desolate and despairing voice of Wild Saber sect's leader before he left rang in his mind. "Celestial luck, celestial luck." There was also the look of despair in his eyes, the look of numbness and despair in the eyes of everyone in Wild Saber sect. And the increasing number of corpses that had fallen under the sabers and swords of the people from residents of 9 Supremes. "Wuchen, what do you think celestial luck is?" Shi Wuchen, Luo Dajiang, and the others were walking forward with Yun Yang, their hearts filled with joy. They were stunned when they heard this question out of the blue. How were they supposed to answer this question? There was no standard answer at all. With a faint smile on his face, Yun Yang continued to walk forward like he was taking a leisurely stroll. Do you think the process of fighting for celestial luck is too cruel? As soon as Yun Yang asked this question, not only Shi Wuchen, but all the teachers and masters of residence of 9 Supremes fell into silence. No one answered. After a moment, Luo Dajiang took a soft breath and said in a low voice, "Do you think too many people have died in this battle, boss?" "Yes, I have this feeling. Before this, I focused on defeating the enemy and didn't think too much, and I didn't hold back in the battle for fear of leaving behind hidden dangers. But now that I think about it, although we have a clear conscience, we were still too bloodthirsty." Luo Dajiang's voice grew deeper. "Regarding this feeling, I have a different opinion from you, boss. As far as this battle is concerned, I really don't think it's cruel or unfair. On the contrary, I think it's very fair." Shi Wuchen nodded slightly in agreement. "Yes, although the process of this battle is bloody and cruel, it's still fair in its bones. It's just that the fittest survive, and the weak are eliminated while the strong are eliminated. Those sects who knew the situation would have withdrawn from the battle long ago, and those who forced themselves to continue are all holding on to the slightest bit of hope." Yun Yang nodded silently. Tai Ching-tsang seemed to be interested as well. "I also think it's fair. This battle is fundamentally a competition between martial artists. Whether it's cruel or not, at least it gives them a chance to compete, and at the same time they have the chance to give up. They can advance or retreat at will. How is it unfair? In my understanding, everything in the world is a microcosm of the flow of celestial luck. In the secular world, the dynasties fight for hegemony for the throne. It's normal for a general to succeed and fill up a mountain of bones. When an emperor ascends to the world, the number of people who died in the process of him achieving hegemony is more than 100,000 or 1,000,000. Whether it's the struggle for the future of cultivation, the struggle for hegemony, or the competition between all walks of life, it's all competition. This is the fight for celestial luck. It's a pity that Fatty Chen Duo is not here. Otherwise, he would have declared at length that the commercial war of the Shang family is equally cruel. Although there may not be mountains of corpses and seas of blood floating on the surface, the conspiracies and intrigues involved will only be better. Just to be able to step on others, they will resort to any means possible. Betrayal, deception, blackmail, and even coercion by force. All kinds of means are endless. As long as you can't think of it, there's nothing that can't happen. If you think deeper, even the most ordinary person, in order to survive in this world, who doesn't try their best to curry favor. However, there are too many people who curry favor, and they may not be able to achieve their goals throughout their lives. If we're talking about fairness, those people are even more unfair. Many people are already at the peak of their lives when they're born. For example, the sons of emperors, the descendants of dukes and marquises, or the sons of the richest. Ordinary people can't even reach the soles of their feet after working hard all their lives. Therefore, the world of ordinary people looks quiet and peaceful, with no obvious crisis, but the so-called absence of danger means that there's no fairness. Fairness has always been fought for at a price. Although the battle for the celestial luck banner is bloody and cruel, and it's not the end even if you win and your life will be gone if you lose, there's a platform that provides a way for you to fight for it. It's not that you have no choice but to accept your fate before you fight. Luo Dajiang said with deep emotion. Even though they know that the hope is slim, everyone is still reluctant to give up this little bit of hope. If you win, you'll have it. If you lose, you'll have nothing just because you're not strong enough and lucky enough. That's unfair. Perhaps the people of the world look at the people of the martial arts world with a secular perspective and think that they're too stupid. Only when people are alive can they have a future. What's wrong with staying alive? It's better to live than to die. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of people have died for the so-called celestial luck banner that they can't eat or drink. But, are they really stupid? Everyone pursues different things. Whether they're stupid or not depends on the person. Other people use money to fight, power to fight, emotion to fight, intelligence to fight. But martial artists use their lives to fight. What they get is naturally different when the price is different. Money, power, and strategy. What they get in the end is nothing more than money, power, and status. But we martial artists fight with our lives. It's the path ahead, the celestial luck. Being alive is luck, and there's still a path ahead. Dying is fate, and dying prematurely in the middle of the path. There's no such thing as cruelty, and there's no such thing as fairness. From the perspective of ordinary people, martial artists are cruel and incomprehensible, but from the perspective of a martial artist, you'll only feel that it's reasonable. What's the big deal? It's nothing more than that. Everyone is the same, fighting with their lives, that's all. Shi Wuchen added coldly, The path of cultivation has always been rugged and difficult. If we don't fight with our lives, what should we fight with? Others are fighting with their lives, but we're delusional enough to not fight with our lives. Can we win? As soon as he said that, everyone burst out laughing. Only Yun Yang remained silent for a moment. After a pause, he guessed, "Do all the martial artists in the Bound of Universe think so?" Tai Ching-tsang asked curiously, "Of course. In the Bound of Universe, only the strong are respected and everything is decided by strength. Boss, don't you think so?" Yun Yang chuckled and did not say anything else. To be honest, Yun Yang really did not think so. Born in the Tianxian continent, he always felt that everything in the Bound of Universe was very different from Tianxian, and there were many things that did not fit in with him. In fact, there were many times when Yun Yang was thinking about a problem. So many martial artists who did not know each other were killed and died just for a slot. Some martial artists who did not know each other would lose their lives just because of a word of quarrel. Yun Yang had always felt that this was too extreme. Was it really necessary? Although Yun Yang had gained more from this battle compared to the others, the large amount of karmic chi had proven that the deceased were definitely not as innocent as he had thought them to be. They might even have deserved to die, and their deaths were not to be regretted. However, how could one walk the martial world without being tainted by karma? Any Jianghu person with a bit of fame might not have killed hundreds or thousands of people, right? Many grievances were not just because of the battle between good and evil. Taking himself as an example, even though he had kept his original intention of serving his country and his family all along the way, the number of soldiers from other countries who had died in his hands was not a small number. It was shocking to even count them all. That was why Yun Yang murmured from time to time, "Celestial luck, celestial luck." It was not a desire for the celestial luck, but a confusion about it. But now that he heard what Shi Wuchen and the others said and saw these sects risking their lives for the celestial luck banner, Yun Yang vaguely felt that he seemed to understand something. It was not that he was indecisive, but all the martial artists in the entire Bound of Universe were like this. The whole atmosphere was like this, not to mention anything else. Thousands of soldiers and horses crossed a single log bridge. Every 3 years, only a handful of people could get the opportunity to go to the next stage. The others were either killed on the bridge or pushed off the bridge. Those who surrendered and gave up while keeping their lives also meant the end of their martial path in this world, and it would be difficult for them to advance further. Everyone could only be so cruel, and only by being so cruel could there be room for improvement. Everyone had long accepted this reality. This was the fate of a martial artist. Since you had chosen to be stronger than ordinary people, then these struggles were the price you had to pay. That was all there was to it. That was all. Yun Yang let out a long sigh and murmured with a smile, "I see. I understand now." At this moment he really felt a lot more relaxed. He was at ease all of a sudden. Remember the mobile version of the website, Chapter 197, Celestial Luck is Fair. Page 1/1. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1075. Yun Yang felt as if there had always been a thin layer of fog in front of him, but after listening to everyone's observation of the world, all the fog disappeared, and his vision became unprecedentedly clear. The world in front of him and his path became clearer. That's right. Every world has its own rules. The Bound of Universe protects the common people with extreme harshness, but correspondingly, it also upholds the concept of the strong being respected. It's to the extreme. In this way, the weak can always live in peace, and the strong will only get stronger and stronger. So, this is the Bound of Universe. Yun Yang felt extremely relaxed when he realized it. I don't need to look at the Bound of Universe from the perspective of the secular world of Tianxian. However, at this moment, there was a sudden turbulence in front of him, and the world in front of him became unusually clear. It was as if it was deliberately cooperating with Yun Yang's enlightenment. What he saw in front of him were 9 steps. At the end of the steps was a huge platform. Yun Yang walked up step by step. When his head emerged from the ground, he heard a loud voice saying, "Challenger of celestial luck, residence of 9 supremes enters the arena." The voice was deafening like thunder and could be heard from far and near. Yun Yang suddenly felt that at this moment, there were countless divine senses shrouding the entrance where he was. Every strand of divine sense was mixed with a strong sense of curiosity, and there were even a few strands of divine sense that were full of malice. However, it was obvious that they could feel it. These divine wills only had the ability to probe, but not to pry into what was going on. They were countless gazes. Yun Yang walked up the steps with a calm expression, and his ethereal purple figure quietly appeared on the ground. The moment he appeared, he felt a slight prickling sensation on his face. It was the countless gazes that were fixed on his face at the same time. Yun Yang smiled faintly, his expression unchanged. Standing at the entrance, he raised his eyes leisurely and glanced around. After a while, Shi Wuchen and the others followed him in and lined up beside him, while Yun Xiuxin and the others stood behind their respective masters. In front of the people of the Residence of Nine Supremes was a huge platform like the first floor. And the difference was probably, right in front of this platform, there was another tall platform made entirely of purple crystal. It looked incomparably luxurious and magnificent. There were 3 seats on the platform, and 3 people in green with golden crowns on their heads were sitting on them. Instinctively, Yun Yang focused his gaze and caught a glimpse of the golden heart-shaped emblem on the sleeves and collars of the 3 men in green. The one in the middle was the leader while the other 2 were his assistants. After looking at this purple crystal platform, the 5 platforms on the left and the 4 platforms on the right also came into view. They were probably the 9 sects with lower-class celestial luck banners, and they were seated in order. The arrangement made the scene look like a gulp, for the entrance that Yun Yang had come from was the only one without a high platform. However, the moment Yun Yang and the people from the Residence of Nine Supremes stood there, the circle seemed to be completed in an instant. Wherever Yun Yang's gaze passed by, the current situation was crystal clear to him. The 10 platforms in front of him were none other than the 9 sects with lower-class celestial luck banners and the hosting platform of the Sacred Heart Palace. However, the current difference in treatment was also obvious. Only the challengers did not have a platform to watch the battles, so the difference in their ranks was clear at a glance. But now that the rules were as such, the people from the Residence of Nine Supremes could only stand there and wait for the next step. There was nothing they could do about the opponents who were seated. But at this moment all the people on the platform had the same feeling. This leader of the Residence of Nine Supremes was so calm. Seeing that all the people from the Residence of Nine Supremes had arrived, the leader of the green-clad men sitting on the platform laughed heartily and stood up. His voice rumbled, "The challenger sects have arrived. The challenge of the lower-class celestial luck banners officially begins." The founder of the Residence of Nine Supremes, Supreme Cloud, Yun Yang, the 8 Supremes under him, Shi Wuchen, Luo Dajiang, Tai Qingcang, the man read out the names of the 9 Supremes of the Residence of Nine Supremes one by one. "I'm Hui Yunfeng, the deacon of the Sacred Heart Palace's Iron Mask Hall. Beside me are 2 of my brothers, Ding Byuk and Yu Byuk. The 3 of us are from the Sacred Heart Palace's Iron Mask Hall, and the 3 of us are the hosts of this Celestial Luck Banners competition. The 3 of us are willing to accept the wrath of heaven for any unfairness in this battle." The man swore an oath at the very beginning, acting as if he was doing business without any selfishness. However, as soon as he made the oath, a thunderclap rang out in the thick fog. The heavenly Tao had acknowledged the oath, and the oath was established. Everyone's face turned solemn and cold. With this oath, no matter what kind of friendship or inside story they had, it was all invalid here. If they wanted to pass, they could only fight with their strength. Hong Changtian, the sect leader of Kangwu Union, who ranked last among the sects with lower-class celestial luck banners, had been staring at Yun Yang and the others with a complicated look in his eyes. Why does the name Residence of Nine Supremes sound so familiar? It seemed that it was not far from his sect and had just been established. He had received the news when it was first established, but there were so many sects in the bound of universe that there were almost as many as the hairs on a cow. Basically, there were new sects established by martial artists every day. How could a newly established sect be taken seriously by him? Who would have thought that the one who had finally overcome all the obstacles and come here to fight against his sect was this newly established Residence of Nine Supremes? Strange things happened every year, but today was especially big, so big that it was almost beyond his understanding. As the saying goes, one can't tolerate others snoring next to one's bed. It really makes sense. If I had known this would happen, I would have. Hong Changtian could not help but feel a little regretful. If he had sent a few disciples to uproot the newly established Residence of Nine Supremes at that time, how could there be such a scene now? Now, there was only one word to describe it: nurture a tiger and invite disaster. Now I'll read out the rules of this battle. Hui Yunfeng's voice was loud and clear, and it spread throughout the square. It was clear that he had great control over his mystical qi. However, although his voice was like a tide, the clouds and mist in the surroundings were unmoved by it and remained calm and undisturbed. Yun Yang and the others listened carefully, not daring to ignore any details. The finals are indeed not what I know before, or rather what I know before is only a part of the challenge. The finals were divided into 5 matches. The first 4 matches were a match between the top experts of each sect, a match between the core forces of each sect, a match between disciples, and a match of formations. These matches were similar to what Yun Yang had learned earlier, the only difference being the last match. The defending side had the right to propose any form of battle to decide the winner. Then there was the basic standard of the match, which was a simple 3 out of 5 match. As long as the first side won 3 matches, it would be the winner of the match. However, above the basic rules of victory and defeat, there was another extraordinary rule. If either side won all 5 matches, not only would they obtain the Celestial Luck Banner, but they could also choose to challenge the higher-ranked sects with the Celestial Luck Banner. For example, if Residents of 9 Supremes won 5 matches in a row against Kangwu Union and won all 5 matches, it could choose to stop or continue to challenge the 8th-ranked sect with the lower-class Celestial Luck Banner. If it won all 5 matches again, it could continue to challenge the 7th-ranked sect and so on. However, this rule was just a decoration for Kangwu Union. Even if Kangwu Union was lucky enough to win against Residents of 9 Supremes, it would be impossible for them to continue to challenge. If Kangwu Union had such strength, it would not have waited until now, and it would not have been coveted by many sects in the qualification battle. As for Residents of 9 Supremes, at least the people from the 9 sects with Celestial Luck Banners shook their heads and sighed at the same time when they saw the members of Residents of 9 Supremes. A sect that had been established for less than a year and had an extremely shallow foundation should be its limit to obtain the qualification to challenge. If it wanted to challenge all the way up after defeating Kangwu Union, it was nothing short of a fool's dream. Even in the battle of this level, all the dead could be resurrected after the battle. The injured could be restored instantly. Their combat strength could always be maintained at the peak. The treatment in this level was obviously much better than the qualification battle, almost the complete opposite of the first level's rule. There was only victory and defeat, no death. After all, the 10 sects, including Residents of 9 Supremes, were actually sects that already had Celestial Luck Banners, and they were no longer cannon fodder in the qualification battle. At this moment, except for Kangwu Union, the people from the other 8 sects were all bored to death. How boring. It was too boring. They had come all the way here just to watch Kangwu Union fight, and when the battle was over they could go home. It had been 3 years and it was over again. Sects with lower-class Celestial Luck Banners were basically not as good as those with Celestial Luck Banners, for they had the power to look down on all the sects that did not have Celestial Luck Banners. However, it was also because they had personally experienced the effect of Celestial Luck Banners and knew the terrifying effect of higher-class Celestial Luck Banners, that most of the sects had long given up the so-called desire to improve. Even if they still had the will to fight, they knew their limits and would never humiliate themselves if they were not completely confident. Probably only Golden Cauldron sect, who ranked first, had some other intentions. Having been the chief disciple of lower-class Celestial Luck Banners for a long time, they felt that their accumulation was enough to support them to go further. They wanted to challenge middle-class Celestial Luck Banners after they were done here. They were also the only sects with lower-class Celestial Luck Banners who were qualified to challenge higher-class Celestial Luck Banners. Even Hui Yunfeng and his 2 companions who were sitting high above, had only calmness and a faint helplessness on their faces. This year's luck was obviously at rock bottom. Not only were they assigned to preside over the lower-class Celestial Luck Banners, but none of the 8 sects ranked at the bottom had the intention to challenge them. Except for Golden Cauldron sect, who ranked first and wanted to challenge the higher-class Celestial Luck Banners, none of the other sects had any more thoughts about their current position. Oh, there was also Golden Cauldron sect. However, Golden Cauldron sect was still not going to challenge the middle-class Celestial Luck Banners in this venue. Therefore, this was only a battle between Kangwu Union and Residents of 9 Supremes. There was no suspense at all. A sect that had dominated lower-class Celestial Luck Banners for 1,000 years was going to challenge Residents of 9 Supremes, which had just been established. Even a fool would not bet on the wrong thing. Even though Mount Pentateuch had isolated all experts' divine senses and it was difficult to not see the level of each other's strength even when they were face to face, there was no need to look at such an obvious thing with one's eyes. One could easily know the result with one's buttocks. The battle of the Celestial Luck Banners this time is boring. Brothers, do you want to bet? Hui Yunfeng asked his 2 colleagues through voice transmission. Ding Byuk and Yu Bunning asked, Big brother, how do you want to bet? Are you the banker? I'll be the banker, Hui Yunfeng said. Let's bet on the outcome of the battle between Residents of 9 Supremes and Kangwu Union. I bet on Kangwu Union, Ding Byuk said with a chuckle. As long as Big Brother is willing to be the banker, I'll bet on Kangwu Union. Yu Bunning said with a chuckle. Hui Yunfeng glared at him and said, "Don't you think this is boring? Do you think I'm a fool?" Ding Byuk laughed and said, "It's you who's boring, big brother. As an elder brother you should be generous. Since you've said you'll be the banker, it means we can bet at will. Don't tell me you want us to bet on residents of 9 Supremes to start the match?" Yes, Yu Bunning chimed in. "One can't be too shameless. If there's a limit to the banker, it's a cheating bet, isn't it?" Hui Yunfeng stroked his chin and said, "Brothers, you'd better weigh the pros and cons. Although Residents of 9 Supremes is only a new sect, its bearing and power are extraordinary. After all, it's also one of the best sects that has stood out in the qualification battle of the Celestial Luck Banner. I've heard that Wild Saber sect, which has fought with Kangwu Union many times decades ago, is also in this qualification battle. Since Residents of 9 Supremes can defeat Wild Saber sect, I'm afraid its strength cannot be underestimated. At least in my opinion, both sides are evenly matched and there's still a lot of suspense. Brothers, please think it over. I'm a good banker." Ding Byuk and Yu Bunning snorted at the same time and looked at Hui Yunfeng as if they were looking at an idiot. "Change bets? Do you think we're idiots? Do you think we'll give you spiritual jades for nothing?" "We're brothers," Hui Yunfeng said. "A small bet is good enough. How about 10, no 5 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jades? If you two bet on Residents of 9 Supremes, I'll pay you 5 to 1. Ha! Ding Byuk laughed. Ha! Yu Bunning laughed. Hui Yunfeng asked, "Not satisfied?" "It doesn't matter. If you bet on Residents of 9 Supremes, I'll pay you 10 to 1. What do you think? If you win, you'll get 50 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jades. What's the point of Kangwu Union? You'll only get a little profit if you win. Fortune comes with risk. Isn't that right?" "Ha! 15 to 1. Ha! 30 to 1. This is my limit. If you still don't want to bet, forget it." Hui Yunfeng complained. "This is too boring." Yu Bunning pondered for a moment and said, 30 to 1, right? Then I'll bet 2 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jades on Residents of 9 Supremes. You're the boss, and as your brother, giving you 2 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jades is already my limit. I really can't afford any more." Ding Byuk was furious. "Yu Bunning, why did you say yes? What did I do to you? This shameless guy has been cheating us of supreme-grade spiritual jades all these years. He has cheated us of hundreds of pieces. Why did you still fall for it?" Yu Bunning smiled. "You still don't understand. This guy is definitely trying to pull us into the game. What's the big deal about 2 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jades? Just consider it a small bet to entertain the gambler." Hui Yunfeng was amused. "Ding Byuk, why don't you just tell me whether you want to bet or not? It's your business whether you want to bet or not, but don't make trouble and interfere with other people's judgment." Ding Byuk said, "Since Yu Bunning has already bet, wouldn't it make me look like I'm not loyal enough to let him suffer? Let's risk our lives and bet with him. I'll lose 2 pieces of spiritual jades to you. But there's one thing we have to agree on. When we go back, take out your 1,000 spirits wine and treat us to a drink. Otherwise you, the banker, can't win." "It's a deal," Hui Yunfeng said. The 2 men sighed and said, "It's a deal." When Hui Yunfeng saw that the bet was a sure win, he suddenly cheered up and said, "I'm really interested in this match now. Let's watch it carefully later." The 2 men rolled their eyes. "You're interested in the supreme-grade spiritual jades, aren't you? I really admire your shamelessness. You can make something that doesn't even have a shadow look real. Wild Saber sect hasn't participated in the Battle of the Banner for at least 100 years, but you actually used it as a ruse just now. I really don't know what to say about you." Hui Yunfeng was taken aback and said in surprise, "Oh? Wild Saber sect hasn't participated in the Battle of the Banner for 100 years. That's my mistake. Anyway, our bet is the winner between Residents of 9 Supremes and Kangwu Union. It doesn't matter whether Wild Saber sect is here or not." Ding Byuk rolled his eyes and said, "I knew you were full of nonsense just now. I almost believed you." Down below, Hong Changtian, the sect leader of Kangwu Union, had been standing for a while, obviously waiting for the first and second matches to start. But the 3 deacons of Sacred Heart Palace above him were talking about something and had ignored him for a long time. It was not appropriate for him to sit down, but if he continued to stand, it would only be more embarrassing. What's going on? Yun Yang was also confused by the current situation. What's going on? Judging from the secret discussion of the 3 people above, there seems to be a special atmosphere. What are they talking about? Why are they so happy? Are they going to get down to business or not? While they were wondering, Hui Yunfeng turned his head and said leisurely, "Residents of Nine Supremes, Yun Yang, sect leader Hong Changtian of Kengwu Union, please come up here." Both men moved at the same time and went up in confusion. Almost at the same time, they arrived at the purple crystal platform. Let's discuss the order of the duels. Hui Yunfeng felt that 4 supreme-grade spiritual jades were about to fall into his pocket, so he was in a good mood. Thinking that no matter how small a grasshopper was, it was still meat, and the 4 supreme-grade spiritual jades were not grasshoppers at all, he said in a pleasant tone, "Both of you discuss how to carry out the first match of the backbone. How to carry out the second match of the pinnacle. According to the usual practice, Kengwu Union will decide how to fight in the third match. After that there may be a fourth and fifth match, but it's all decided here." No matter how amiable Hui Yunfeng was and how he behaved in an inquiring tone, both Hong Changtian and Yun Yang could feel from his words that he had already made arrangements, and they just had to carry them out. "That's good," said Hong Changtian. Yun Yang followed his advice and said, "I have no opinion either. It's up to the High Emissary." "That's for the best." Hui Yunfeng said, "Then let's start as soon as possible. Sect leaders, you can go back and arrange your men in formations now. The battle of the Celestial Luck Banners should be fair, so I won't say anything more." After a pause, an even more cordial smile spread across his face. "I wish both of you will get what you want in advance." Ah. The corners of Yun Yang and Hong Changtian's mouths twitched at the same time. "You wish both of us to get what we want at the same time? What you're doing is really weird." This chapter had 5,000 words. Chapter 1076. There was no sincerity in this blessing at all. Yun Yang twitched his lips while Hong Changtian rolled his eyes. As the 2 men turned and walked down, they heard Hong Changtian say in a cold voice, "Sect leader Yun, although blades and spears have no eyes, with the help of this magical realm, casualties can be avoided. When this challenge is over, we should have a good time as neighbors." What he meant was that he could not kill Yun Yang here, but it would not be too late to kill him when they got back. Yun Yang smiled warmly and said, "Residents of Nine Supremes is just a new sect. It is indeed time for us to ask sect leader Hong for some valuable experience in dealing with people as a sect with a lower-class celestial luck banner. After all, we are all beginners in mastering the celestial luck banner, and it is inevitable that we will be flustered and make a fool of ourselves." When he heard Yun Yang say that residents of Nine Supremes would definitely win the battle against Kengwu Union, Hong Changtian snorted angrily and left with a flick of his sleeve. Yun Yang laughed and turned to return to the main formation. "The first match is the Battle of the Backbone. How about Shi Wuchen?" Yun Yang asked, looking at the 8 men. Luo Dajiang coughed and said, "I can of course, but I wonder if we brothers will have the chance to fight after him." Shi Wuchen snorted and unleashed his sword intent. With a clang he bounced Luo Dajiang a few steps back. Then, with a swoosh, he drew his sword and rushed out without saying anything. "Residents of Nine Supreme Supreme Sword Master Shi Wuchen is here. Which senior from Kengwu Union is here to teach me?" As soon as Shi Wuchen appeared, the burst of sword energy made everyone shudder. Who is this man? His sword intent is so strong. However, when someone introduced himself, the crowd burst into laughter and did not stop for a long time. I was wondering who it was. It turns out to be Shi Wuchen of the Demiurge Flawed 10, the famous Bound of Universe whetstone. No wonder. Shi Wuchen, who heard the uproar from the crowd, was not offended by the mockery and ridicule. He smiled faintly and said, that's right. I'm Shi Wuchen, who was known as the whetstone in the past. In fact, today is no different from the past. I'm still everyone's whetstone. Today, I hope that the experts from Kengwu Union would be generous enough to give me some pointers so that I, this whetstone, can sharpen Kengwu Union well. If you miss this opportunity, it'll be hard for you to enjoy the benefit of resurrection. Shi Wuchen smiled coldly. Everyone, please seize this opportunity. When faced with the provocation and ridicule that came surging over, Shi Wuchen was actually composed, and he seemed as if he was willing to endure it. Hong Changtian, the sect master of Kengwu Union, narrowed his eyes for the first time when he saw this. Third junior brother. However, a person walked out from behind him. He seemed to be a middle-aged man in his 40s. His expression was cold and indifferent as he replied in a deep voice, I will not disappoint senior brother. I will definitely win this battle. Then he walked out slowly and said, Jiang Jingfei, the merciless sword of Kengwu Union, is here to learn from the residents of Nine Supremes. Jiang Jingfei paused for a moment and said, I've long heard of Brother Shi's name, but I've never had the chance to meet you. Today's battle comes at a good time, and I can fulfill my long-cherished wish of sharpening my saber." A cold smile appeared on Shi Wuqian's initially cold face. "Please." With a loud sword hum, Jiang Jingfei's sword was unsheathed. The field was immediately filled with a brilliant light, and a sword energy soared into the sky. The massive sword energy filled the field, and the swords that hung by the waists of many people actually let out a clang. There was actually a resonance of tens of thousands of swords, which was an extraordinary sight. Jiang Luoluo, who was standing beside Yun Yang, said, "This man is Jiang Jingfei, the Merciless Sword, the second expert of Kangwu Union. However, his cultivation base is rumored to be even higher than the sect master, Hongchang Tian. He has been obsessed with the sword all his life. Although he hasn't been cultivating for a long time, his sword cultivation base has already reached a higher level, and he has even forged the heart of the sword, making him a formidable opponent." Yun Yang asked, "What level is this man at?" "I'm not sure about that," Jiang Luoluo said. "Although Kangwu Union is a sect that owns the Celestial Luck Banner, it is only a lower-class sect, and its ranking is the lowest. Our Phoenix sect doesn't pay much attention to it. In fact, the reason why I know some of Jiang Jingfei's background is because, when I arrived at the residence of 9 Supremes, I specially selected some information in my spare time." As she spoke, the contempt that was ingrained in the bones of a middle-class sect disciple towards a lower-class sect was completely revealed. It was all contempt and contempt. Yun Yang asked in a low voice, "Luoluo, may I ask what is the level of the strongest expert in your Phoenix sect?" Jiang Luoluo hesitated for a moment and then said, "I'm really not sure about that. All I know is that the sect master's cultivation base has reached the pinnacle of the first grade of Supreme Saint, but I can't guarantee that the sect master's cultivation base is the highest in the sect, nor can I guarantee that there is no one who is on par with or even stronger than him." Yun Yang nodded and thanked her. "This information is enough. Thank you." Jiang Luoluo couldn't say it clearly because it was a secret of the sect. However, what Jiang Luoluo had said so far was as clear as it could be. In sects that had a long heritage, the cultivation base of the sect master was usually not the highest in the sect. After all, the sect master needed to handle more external affairs than others, and it was difficult for him to focus on his cultivation path when he was always in charge of the sect's survival. However, the cultivation base of the top expert in the sect must not be too far away from the sect master. There would never be a situation where the difference between a sect's supreme saint and the top expert in the sect was like heaven and earth. As far as I know, there are 3 supreme saint experts in the General Commerce League, and all of them are third-grade supreme saint experts. That's why they have the confidence to compete for the higher-class Celestial Luck Banner. Jiang Luoluo's sect doesn't rank too high among the sects with the middle-class Celestial Luck Banner, and their sect master is first-grade Supreme Saint. It can basically be inferred that most of the middle-class Celestial Luck Banner sects don't have experts at the level of Saint. Even the super sects ranked at the bottom of the upper-class ranking may not have experts at the level of Saint. Yun Yang pondered and came to a conclusion that the residence of 9 Supremes was relatively happy to see. At this time, Shi Wuqian also began to slowly draw his sword in the field. The shiny blade was revealed inch by inch. Compared to Jiang Jingfei's resonance of 10,000 swords, Shi Wuqian's unsheathing of his sword was a little ordinary, with almost nothing outstanding. But no matter what the prestige was before the fight, the true meaning of the contest was always on the actual fight. The 2 men's swords clashed head-on at the beginning of the fight. The moment the sword light crossed, a deafening rumble rang out, like the roar of a dragon or a tiger, stirring the hearts of the people. As soon as the 2 of them clashed, even such an extreme fight without any tricks was relatively rare in the current battle of the Celestial Luck Banner. The battle between Shi Wuqian and Jiang Jingfei was the backbone battle in the battle of the Celestial Luck Banner. It was also the first battle. In addition to winning or losing, the first battle also involved the issue of momentum. If the challenger won the first battle, his morale would naturally be boosted, and his prestige would be greatly boosted. On the other hand, if the defender won, the situation would inevitably take a turn for the worse. Therefore, both the attacker and the defender would put in a lot of effort in the first battle. Otherwise, Kangwu Union would not have sent Jiang Jingfei, a high-end combat force whose real strength could at least be ranked among the top 3 in the Kangwu Union, in the first battle. In this head-on clash between the 2 of them, the most important thing was one's own cultivation. This was because in this kind of battle, the support that moves and movement techniques could provide was at its lowest. Moreover, once one lost, it would be like a landslide with almost no room for recovery. Therefore, in this kind of battle mode, unless it was at the very last moment, it was rarely used, not to mention an extreme clash right from the start. Therefore, as soon as the fight began, everyone on both sides was on tenterhooks, hoping or worried that the winner would be decided in one move. Fortunately, the battle was far from over. Shi Wuqian staggered and retreated 30 feet back as if he had been electrocuted. Jiang Jingfei, who was opposite him, swayed as well, but he only took half a step back. Both of them turned their bodies sideways at the same time. Swoosh! 2 gusts of sword wind flew past their throats at the same time. On the surface, it seemed that they were evenly matched and Shi Wuqian was slightly weaker, but it was not to the extent that he could not fight. The gap was very small. The faces of Yun Yang and the others turned serious. The expressions of the people from the other sects who were watching the battle also turned serious. Even Hui Yunfeng's expression changed abruptly. Ding Buke and Yu Buning's eyes lit up. The battle of celestial fortune isolated all divine senses, so it was impossible to use one's profound cultivation base and divine sense to see through the opponent's cultivation base as usual. Others might not be able to see through it, but Hui Yunfeng and the other two, as the higher-ups of the Sacred Heart Palace, were far superior to everyone else in terms of vision and experience, so they could see more clues than anyone else. Even though the 3 of them could not see through the real cultivation base of the 2 combatants because of the restriction of this realm, they could tell that Shi Wuqian had deliberately retreated 30 feet after the impact, while Jiang Jingfei's half-step back was the real reason he lost his footing and had to retreat. In other words, Shi Wuqian was not as weak as he appeared to be. Jiang Jingfei, who was fighting on the other side, obviously did not notice this. Moreover, no matter how strong the 2 sides were, it was inevitable for them to bear the impact. Shi Wuqian retreated 30 feet, which was enough to dissipate all the aftershocks of the impact, while Jiang Jingfei forcibly suppressed it. In the end, he could not hold on any longer and had to retreat, which increased the pressure he had to bear. But in terms of this blow, not only did Shi Wuqian not fall into a disadvantageous position, he even had the upper hand. The 2 men exchanged blows in the arena, and the battle was extremely fierce. Shi Wuqian maintained the momentum he had at the beginning and was now at a complete disadvantage. Every time their weapons collided, his body would sway. Seeing that he had the upper hand, his opponent did not show any mercy. He waved his sword and attacked fiercely like a storm, almost using it as a broadsword, forcing Shi Wuqian to fight head-on. Obviously, he wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. His opponent's intention was obvious. He wanted to kill and suppress Shi Wuqian with the momentum of a mountain. He wanted to declare the invincibility of Kangwu Union in that overbearing manner. Shi Wuqian kept retreating. After several clashes, he had retreated no less than 50 feet, almost from the center of the arena to the opposite side. Seeing that their side had gained the upper hand, the 30-odd men from Kangwu Union cheered and cheered loudly, and the atmosphere became more and more intense. On the side of residents of 9 Supremes, Yun Xiaoxin and the other junior disciples were also cheering loudly, their palms sweating and their faces extremely nervous. They wished they could join the battle themselves and help. Another loud clang rang out. Shi Wuqian was still weaker than his opponent as before. He staggered and took 3 steps back, his body still swaying and his face pale. Jiang Jingfei, on the opposite side, was also pale and sweating, but he was in high spirits, and his eyes were blazing with excitement. He pressed forward step by step and did not relax at all. Obviously, he felt that victory was in his grasp, and he was chasing after his opponent, intending to finish the battle in one fell swoop. At this point, the battle between the 2 men had lasted more than 10 minutes. In the arena, Shi Wuqian's situation was getting more and more unfavorable. His breathing was unusually rapid, and his dodging gradually became irregular. Suddenly, he grunted and staggered, his body and mind unbalanced, as if he had lost his center of gravity. Even his sword was flung away, leaving him vulnerable. Seeing that the opportunity had come, Jiang Jingfei grinned hideously and immediately used his fastest movement technique to dash across 100 feet like a bolt of lightning. His sword flashed with a frightening sword light, and with a long roar, he thrust it forward like a shooting star. The target was Shi Wuqian's chest, a vital part of his body. His intention to kill was obvious. Seeing that it was impossible to avoid the sword, the outcome was about to be decided. The people of Residence of 9 Supremes exclaimed at once. Although they knew that both sides would be resurrected in the main arena of the Celestial Luck Banner contest, they were still newcomers to the place, and they could not help but be frightened when faced with such a life-or-death situation. However, at this moment, Shi Wuqian, who had lost his balance and was about to fall, suddenly reversed his falling momentum. With a roll that was completely impossible and unimaginable to others, he moved 3 feet away from Shi Wuqian at the last moment. Jiang Jingfei's sword brushed past Shi Wuqian's side and rushed over. This was a sword that was determined to win, and Jiang Jingfei did not hold back at all. He had already used the same move. At this moment, Jiang Jingfei's face changed dramatically. But it was too late for him to react. After avoiding his opponent's fatal strike, Shi Wuqian counterattacked fiercely. His body turned sideways, and his sword flashed out like a poisonous dragon coming out of the abyss. The sword was unprecedentedly fast, almost surpassing the speed of light. In the blink of an eye, it had already reached its target. A soft peewage sound signified that the sword had struck its target. Jiang Jingfei screamed, and his eyes turned to his chest in disbelief. A sword was stuck there, glinting with a cold light. Streams of blood were flowing out of his chest. The sword came so fast that the tip of the sword pierced through his chest and into the ground. Jiang Jingfei roared and tried to leap up with all his remaining strength. At that moment, he had forgotten that his body was pinned to the ground by a long sword. With this leap, his body had already been torn apart before he could hurt his enemy. However, at that moment he was determined. Ignoring his torn body, he persisted in brandishing his hands and viciously strangled Shi Wuqian's neck with both hands. The metal wind whistled. "You cheated?" Shi Wuqian kicked out, and Jiang Jingfei's body, which was already in tatters, was instantly smashed into pieces. In a battle, the winner takes precedence. Everything else is trivial. So what if I cheated? Don't you know that all is fair in war? I can't lose this battle and I won't lose, Shi Wuqian said indifferently. Shi Wuqian's voice was not very loud, but everyone present had sharp ears and eyes. Everyone heard him clearly, and they all took it as a lesson and understood it in their hearts. Jiang Jingfei's body was torn apart in the air, scattering in 7 or 8 directions. Blood splattered all over the ground. Chapter 1077. The winner had been decided. The one who had been attacking fiercely was defeated and dead. And the one who had been dodging and being at a disadvantage had miraculously turned the tables. The happy face of Hong Changtian, the leader of Kangwu Union, turned pale in an instant. All the people of Kangwu Union had dull eyes, as if they had been struck by lightning. They had lost. They had lost the crucial first match. And they had lost in an inexplicable way when the situation was in their favor. All is fair in war? What kind of F***king saying is fair in war? Hong Changtian almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. At this moment there was a flash of light in the field. The legendary benefit of resurrection had come as expected. Jiang Jingfei, who had been crushed to pieces and could not be more dead, was restored in an instant, but standing on the ground, his face was still full of bewilderment. After a long while he suddenly roared, "Shi Wuqian, come out." Hui Yunfeng shouted from above, "The winner has been decided. Why are you still yelling over there? Stand down." Hearing this rebuke, Jiang Jingfei trembled all over, and his face was as pale as a dead man's, completely drained of blood. Only when Hong Changtian shouted at him repeatedly did he walk back step by step. Every step he took was as heavy as dragging countless mountains. Hui Yunfeng sighed softly and said, "He is an idiot." He did not feel that his opponent was deliberately showing weakness and deliberately consuming his energy and physical strength. It is not a shame that he lost this match. It would be a miracle if he didn't lose. Meanwhile, Shi Wuqian had returned to residence of 9 Supreme's camp with a pale face. What greeted him was the seemingly concerned but secretly mocking gazes of his brothers. Luo Dajiang came up to him and said as soon as he saw him, "Second brother, you must have had a hard time putting on this show, didn't you?" Shi Wuqian snorted and rolled his eyes. "What else could I have done? That's what Big Brother had arranged. I wanted to cut him down with my sword, but Big Brother didn't want to, did he?" Ren Wuxing laughed when he heard that. "Second brother, you can feel it yourself. What level is Jiang Jingfei's strength?" Shi Wuqian scoffed. "Judging by his strength, he's probably at the pinnacle of a second-tier saint. If it wasn't for Boss repeatedly reminding me of the need for tactics, I would have turned him into dust with one slash." Everyone laughed. No one mocked Shi Wuqian for blowing his own trumpet. Instead, all of them patted Shi Wuqian's shoulder and praised him. "Second brother. What a good second brother." Shi Wuqian snorted and raised his head. But then he turned his head suspiciously. "You guys, why don't you call me Itua anymore?" Everyone said sincerely, "Second brother, you won the first battle and made such a great contribution. You even put in so much effort to put on an act." "You've already put in so much effort. How can we have the nerve to call you names again? We can't bear to. Sure, Wuchen still felt that something was not right. He scratched his head and said, something is still not right. You guys, Yun Yang intervened at the right time and said in a seemingly serious tone, it's the second round now. Don't bother about titles anymore. The second match was the pinnacle battle between the two sides. It was the usual battle between the top experts of each sect. At this moment, Jiang Jingfei was kneeling in front of the high platform belonging to Kangwu Union, refusing to stand up. His face was full of tears and he was silent for a long time. Hong Changtian said a few words as if to comfort him, but Jiang Jingfei's knees seemed to have grown from the ground. The people from Kangwu Union could do nothing to him. Shi Wuchen sighed softly. That man is a real man. Even I can't bear to see him like this. At this moment, an old man on the opposite side rose with a sword in his hand. His body was full of mystical qi as he landed on the platform. Get up, Jingfei. Open your eyes wide and watch as I turn the tables for you. The old man's hair was white and he looked hale and hearty. He was thin but he was extraordinarily tall, more than 8 feet tall. When he stood up he looked like a bamboo pole standing straight and upright. The newcomer's green robe fluttered in the wind, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in the arena. Kangwu Union has lost the first round, he said coldly. I wonder which expert will residents of 9 Supremes send to fight the second round? I'm Gao Danyun of Kangwu Union, and I await your challenge. Yun Yang stood up and was about to fight when Luo Dajiang spoke first. Boss, shall I fight this round? Yun Yang stopped and nodded. Yes, if Dajiang fights this round, it will be more in line with the established strategy. Luo Dajiang laughed, obviously quite pleased with himself. Ren Qinghuang frowned and said, Boss, this is a pinnacle battle, and it is customary for the strongest experts of each sect to fight. This Gao Danyun must be the #1 expert of Kangwu Union. Divine senses are shielded here, so it's difficult for us to tell the level of each other's strength. This battle may be unstable. It'll be fine if Dajiang wins, but if he loses, the road ahead will be difficult. Even if he wins this battle in the end, he will lose the chance to challenge again. Luo Dajiang hesitated at once when he heard that. After all, it was a matter of great importance. The battle of the #1 expert was indeed unusual, and the purpose of residents of 9 Supremes was to seize the higher-level celestial luck banners, so there could be no mistakes in any of the battles. They must win all the battles. Lan Ruojuan and the others also looked solemn at this moment, no longer as playful as before. It was gratifying that Shi Wuchen had made a good start, but it was not necessarily because his opponents did not know his true strength. The old man he was fighting now was obviously their #1 expert. If his strength was too profound and exceeded their expectations, and he defeated Luo Dajiang who was slightly weaker, then they would be fools and everything would be over. Only Yun Yang's expression was still relaxed as he said, Dajiang, don't worry. I can guarantee that you won't lose. This old man's strength is mediocre, far weaker than yours. Really? The others asked together. Of course it's true. I've seen it with my own eyes. Yun Yang laughed. Luo Dajiang regained his spirits at once and said cheerfully, if that's the case, there's nothing else to worry about. I'll go now. Go ahead. Luo Dajiang leaped down with his saber on his shoulder. Supreme Saber of Residents of 9 Supremes, Luo Dajiang, is here to learn from you. The stands on both sides were filled with whispers. Why is he one of the Demiurge Flawed 10 again? This Residents of 9 Supremes is a little interesting. On the high platform, Hui Yunfeng could not help but laugh. 2 of the Demiurge Flawed 10 have shown up one after another. If a few more of them come, is this Residents of 9 Supremes a concentration camp for the famous whetstones in the Bound of Universe? Big brother, don't underestimate the Demiurge Flawed 10, said Ding Byuk. These 10 people have been whetstones for many years, but none of them has died prematurely. This is already a very rare miracle. Apart from their own strength, which is not weaker than the top experts of lower-class celestial luck banners, they also have extremely rich combat experience. If all of them really converge and become members of a sect, it will be like joining a rope from a single line, and their comprehensive strength is absolutely not to be underestimated. The battle just now is the best proof. Once Residents of 9 Supremes obtains the celestial luck banner, I'm afraid it will be like a trapped dragon soaring into the sky or leaping into the abyss. Chapter 1078. Yes, that makes a lot of sense, Hui Yunfeng said. But if that's the case, the strongest expert in the newly established Residents of 9 Supremes will most likely not be Yun Yang, right? According to the information we have, That boy is a genius who ascended from the lower realm, but his cultivation base can't be too high. At the very least, he can't be a match for any of the Demiurge Flawed 10. Based on this, doesn't that mean that Yun Yang is working for someone else? I don't believe it. Of course not, Yu Bunning said. Generally, the leaders of sects with a long history are experienced and prudent, and they don't need to be outstanding in cultivation base. However, as the founder of a sect, he must be a brilliant man. How could he work for someone else? There must be something fishy about this. I agree with old Yu, Ding Byuk said. As a genius who ascended from the lower realm, Yun Yang will never be so short-sighted that he will be used by others. Also, the reality is that Residence of 9 Supremes has broken through the encirclement of 500 sects and won the competition for the Celestial Luck Banner not long after its establishment. It is not easy to deal with them. The Demiurge Flawed 10 alone cannot do this. With a deep look in his eyes, Hui Yunfeng said faintly, "It seems that this Residence of 9 Supremes is really interesting. There is a lot of suspense in this match." Yu Bunning chuckled and said, "Sure enough, the heavenly Tao is a good cycle. Heaven never forgives anyone. I'm about to get my 60 supreme grade stones." Hui Yunfeng's face darkened when he heard that, and he was no longer as enigmatic as before. In the field, Gao Danyun stroked his sword and said coldly, "Our sect belongs to the seniors, so I'll let you, the challengers, make the first move." Luo Dajiang let out a long laugh. Without saying a word, he took a big step forward, and as he did so, his body seemed to have grown twice its original size. Luo Dajiang's body was tall and large to begin with. His stature wasn't inferior to Gao Danyun's at all. In fact, he was much more muscular than Gao Danyun. Now that his stature had grown another size, every step he took was like a towering mountain. He charged forward with immense might. As he moved forward, a crisp sound rang out. The golden band on his head suddenly exploded, and his long hair flew in the air. After another 3 steps, he leaped up, and the broadsword in his hand suddenly turned into a bolt of lightning that struck down from the sky. Domineering. Wild. The aura was earth-shattering. At this moment, Gao Danyun only felt waves of coldness from the bottom of her heart, and her entire body felt as if it had fallen into a bone-piercing icy river. Her body was practically unable to move, and even her mind wasn't in control. She seemed to have stiffened. He felt that he was like a little lamb on the grassland, and his opponent was a ferocious beast that had unleashed all of its strength and was madly charging at him, fighting to its heart's content. His opponent's aura had completely locked onto him. There was nowhere to run. It was unavoidable. Like a bolt of lightning, the broadsword slashed down with the momentum of a thunderbolt. Gao Danyun was the strongest expert of Kangwu Union after all. He finally regained his senses at the last moment. With a fierce roar, he raised his sword with all his might to block the attack. Even as he fought back stubbornly, he retreated quickly. It was obvious that he was not optimistic that he could withstand the broadsword. At this moment, Luo Dajiang's broadsword slashed down in the most direct and head-on collision. However, when the two of them collided, there was only a soft clang. The sword of Gao Danyun, the strongest expert of Kangwu Union, was almost defenseless and split into 2. The blade, which seemed to be unobstructed, slashed down from the top of Gao Danyun's head all the way from his head to his crotch, and its momentum did not diminish. It went all the way to the ground, and only then did a loud rumble rang out. It was the sound of the saber's energy hitting the ground. The rumble echoed throughout the mountains and valleys. As for Gao Danyun, his thin body was evenly split into 2 halves by the broadsword and fell to both sides. He looked like 2 pieces of paper drifting helplessly in the air. The speed at which the battle ended was unimaginably fast and beyond everyone's expectation, causing the whole place to fall silent for a long time. Everyone, including Hui Yunfeng and the others, widened their eyes. Isn't this a battle between the strongest experts of both sects? Even if it wasn't a fierce battle that everyone thought they would see, they would at least fight for 3 to 5 rounds before one side would be defeated by the other side's stunning moves. At the very least, they would have to use some kind of strange secret technique that was unpredictable and out of everyone's expectations. In the end, although it was also unexpected, the battle was over before even one move was completed. But, isn't this a little too much of a joke? At the same time, everyone from Kangwu Union stood up abruptly when they saw the scene. Then they froze and fixed their eyes on the battlefield as if they had seen a ghost. They had just heard their Grand Uncle Master say in a graceful manner, "You make the first move." Then the opponent made his move, and the Grand Uncle Master was cut in 2 by the opponent. At this moment, not only were the spectators surprised, but even Luo Dajiang, the other person involved in the battle, was stunned. Blood was still dripping from the blade, but Luo Dajiang's expression was one of confusion. At the beginning of the battle, Luo Dajiang's mental pressure was probably caused by the crowd's talk about the outcome of the battle between the strongest experts, and there was no way to detect the opponent's strength here. Moreover, the opponent had acted like he was an expert from the beginning, standing there with an air of confidence and letting Luo Dajiang make the first move, as if victory was already in his grasp. This made Luo Dajiang feel even more pressure. Therefore he had gone all out and tried his best to fight. But it never occurred to him that the strongest expert on the opposite side, who had the air of an expert, would be killed with just one slash. Was there a mistake somewhere in this? Luo Dajiang was still in a state of confusion until the cheers of his brothers and disciples behind him shook the heaven and earth. He still could not figure out what was going on, so he scratched his head subconsciously and murmured, It's over? Hui Yunfeng's voice, which sounded like he was suffering from constipation, rang out from above, Residents of 9 Supremes wins the second match of the challenge. Hui Yunfeng's heart trembled as he spoke those words. Damn it, my 120 Supreme-grade spiritual jades are going to fly away now. Is this true? I can't believe this. At this moment, the chair under Hui Yunfeng's buttocks had been shattered by the strong mystical qi that overflowed from his body. Although it was still intact now, it was only supported by Hui Yunfeng's mystical qi. Once he stood up or withdrew his mystical qi, the chair would immediately crumble and turn into ashes. Hui Yunfeng's heart was full of anger at this moment. Kingwu Union, you are a sect with a celestial luck banner that has been passed down for more than 1,000 years. For more than 1,000 years, apart from the Wild Saber sect, no latecomer force can shake your foundation. Motherf asterisk her. Why are you so lame? Are you trying to make me lose on purpose? Genius 1 second remember site address. Mobile version, M. Chapter 1079. A beam of light flashed. The two halves of Gao Danyun's corpse suddenly disappeared, and Gao Danyun, who had reverted to the appearance of a thin bamboo pole, reappeared on the battlefield. However, after he recovered, he was in a daze. His face was pale and his eyes were dull. After a long time, his seemingly stiff body subconsciously trembled. Beads of sweat poured out of his forehead and dripped down. Until now, his mind and heart were still filled with that earth-shattering saber strike. What a domineering and shocking slash it was. It was an invincible and resolute slash that no one could resist. That was an extreme feeling of death. In the face of such a slash, he had no room to fight back. The defeat was not in vain. After a long time, Gao Danyun sighed in frustration and said, I've lost. The moment he turned around, his calm demeanor vanished, and he staggered all the way back to his sect. Hong Changqian's eyes were filled with confusion as he watched his grand uncle master walk toward him like an old man in his twilight years. His body was stiff and his mind was blank as he said in a trembling voice, Grand Uncle Master. Gao Danyun's face was pale. Shaking his head, he said in a low voice, My opponent's strength is far stronger than mine. It's an absolute suppression. It has nothing to do with any plots or schemes other than absolute strength. Just his momentum alone is enough to make me completely unable to resist. I've lost this match and I'm convinced of my defeat. I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. Hong Changqian's eyes widened, and his eyes were filled with horror. The third match? Hui Yunfeng's voice came from above. His eyes shifted to Kingwu Union's side, and the other 8 sects also shifted their attention to them at this moment. The third match would be a life-and-death match for Kingwu Union. They had lost the previous 2 matches, and if they lost this one they would lose the Celestial Luck Banner. Therefore, the decision was now on Kingwu Union's side. How to fight, who to send, whether to fight of formations or disciples, or to fight freely were all questions. If they won, they would not only win the match, but also have a chance to turn defeat into victory. If they lost, it would be a crushing defeat beyond redemption. Hong Changqian's lips trembled. It was obvious that he had lost his mind. In the first 2 battles he had lost unexpectedly, especially in the second battle where he had lost miserably. Now that the third battle was about to begin, Hong Changtian was at a loss, unable to make a decision. Beside him, Gao Danyun's face was still pale, but his eyes were flickering as he said in a low voice, Now that our sect is in a critical situation, we must win a match to regain our momentum, and only then are we qualified to talk about the future. Although we have lost 2 matches in a row, I found something in these 2 matches. Shi Wuchen, whom the opponent sent for the first match, is strong, but he is obviously far from Luo Dajiang's level. The gap is huge and they can't be mentioned in the same breath. However, for the residents of Nine Supremes, this is a crucial opening match, yet they still pin their hopes on him. This almost shows that Shi Wuqian is the strongest fighting force in the residents of Nine Supremes after Luo Dajiang. Hong Changtian nodded slowly. According to common sense, this point was correct. Luo Dajiang is first, and Shi Wuqian is second. In other words, the cultivation base of the rest of the residents of Nine Supremes is even lower than Shi Wuqian. This deduction is valid, isn't it? Hong Changtian nodded again. In fact, although Jiang Jingfei lost the first battle, he had been suppressing Shi Wuqian throughout the entire battle. Everyone can see this for themselves. He only lost to his opponent's scheming at the last moment. The outcome of the battle was only a matter of time, and Jiang Jingfei's true strength was superior. Yes, you can say that. Then, can we conclude that if Jiang Jingfei were to fight the others, he would definitely win? Of course. But Jiang Jingfei has already fought and he can't fight again. Fortunately, the contestants can't fight again. If Luo Dajiang fought again, we would have lost for sure. Changtian, your cultivation base is about the same as Jiang Jingfei's, and your moves may be slightly inferior, but your character is more stable than his. In the third battle that is about to begin, we need to win and we need to be steady. We must win. We must win. Changtian, why don't you propose a match of sect leaders? Gao Danyun said, their sect leader didn't fight in the first two matches, and you didn't fight on our side either. This match is basically a battle of life and death, so it's reasonable for the sect leaders of both sides to fight. After listening to Gao Danyun's words, Hong Changtian's extremely uneasy heart finally calmed down. After thinking about it for a while, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that it made sense. Logically speaking, the first match and the match of the number one expert should be a match where both sides had to show their full strength, especially the first match, which was a battle that residents of Nine Supremes was determined to win. As the sect leader, if Yun Yang's cultivation base was stronger, how could he not fight? Although Shi Wuqian had won, the hardships he had gone through were still vivid in his mind, and he could not bear to look back on it. There was probably only one reason why he insisted on doing so. It was not that he did not want to fight, but he was not strong enough, and the odds of winning would be even lower if he forced himself to fight. Hong Changtian nodded, then stood up and said, "That's right. The third match is the key and it's not suitable for anyone else to fight. Leader Yun, why don't you and I, as the leaders of our sects, have a match?" Yun Yang coughed and said faintly, "No matter who fights, the result will be the same. Residents of Nine Supremes will definitely win, and the Celestial Luck Banner is already in the bag." Hong Changtian chuckled and extended his body, descending from the high platform like a cloud. His hands were clasped behind his back the entire time, and his face was filled with an amiable smile. "Then please enlighten me, Master Yun. I am Hong Changtian, the leader of the Blue Parasol sect." Yun Yang stood up, seeming to hesitate for a moment before he said, "Sect leader Hong, if someone else were to fight this battle and you did not, even if you were to lose, you could still retain your dignity as a sect leader and stay. But if you and I still lose after we fight, it will be a fatal blow to your disciples. Have you really thought about this, sect leader Hong?" Hong Changtian smiled. "If we lose the third match, the Celestial Luck Banner is destined to leave Blue Parasol sect. What confidence do we have then? What harm is there in keeping my dignity?" But in his heart he thought, Yun Yang is obviously afraid. Talking too much before the match, luring me to change my opponent or distracting me is not what an expert should do. Emboldened, he invited Yun Yang to fight again. "Please, Leader Yun." Yun Yang sighed and quietly flew into the arena. On the high platform, Hu Yunfeng was dumbfounded. Are the people of Blue Parasol sect crazy? The third match is the key one. Residents of Nine Supremes has just been established. Even if all the higher-ups are experts, their disciples can't be so strong. Judging by the number of disciples they have, there are only about a dozen of them, so it's only reasonable for them to send their disciples to fight and win the match. Why is the sect leader fighting in person? Ding Buick and Yu Bunning were also puzzled by this and they could not figure it out. As the founder of the sect, if his fighting strength was not strong enough, how could he have subdued experts like Luo Dajiang and Shi Wuqian? Was there something wrong with the head of Blue Parasol sect's sect leader? Was he seeking his own death by helping the sect leader to make a name for himself? In the arena, Hong Changtian reached out and drew his sword, his face still full of smiles. "Please." With his hands empty, Yun Yang said faintly, "Sect leader Hong, please go first." Hong Changtian was no longer courteous. In fact, now was not the time to be courteous. His sect had lost 2 matches in a row, and no matter how calm he looked on the surface, his heart was already frying. He was only trying to maintain the demeanor of a sect leader and save face. At this moment, without any hesitation, he thrust his sword across the sky. A mountain of swords emerged, followed by a sword light that surged like the waves of a sea. 1,000 waves of mountains and seas. Hong Changqian's first move was an ultimate move. He and his sword seemed to have become one, and a mighty sword light swept over. On the opposite side was a mountain of swords and a sea of swords. Yun Yang, dressed in a purple robe, stood where he was. In the face of the oncoming attack, he only raised his right hand gently and spread his fair palm. His movement was so relaxed and casual that everyone could see it clearly. Not only did this Supreme Yun intend to fight with his bare hands, but he also acted so casually and carelessly. Isn't this a little too arrogant? Everyone stared at his hand eagerly. The moment his palm was opened to the extreme, it suddenly closed, and then there was a clang of a saber. In between Yun Yang's fair palm, a saber appeared out of thin air. It was a beautiful, oddly shaped spirit slash shrouded in purple qi. As soon as the spirit slash was in his hand, Yun Yang did not hesitate. He rose from the ground, wielded the saber with his right hand, and put his left hand behind his back. Then, in a graceful posture, he swung the saber down in an unusually straight line. The momentum of this strike was almost the same as Luo Dajiang's strike. The only difference between the two was that Luo Dajiang was wielding his saber with both hands and leaping forward with an air of superiority. Yun Yang, on the other hand, was waiting for the enemy to come before him before he swung his saber, looking even more leisurely. In terms of the prelude, the difference between the two strikes was huge. At the very least, Luo Dajiang's strike had a preemptive strike that would either succeed or die trying, while Yun Yang's strike seemed too casual and casual. However, the results of these two slashes were the same, shockingly the same. With a flash of saber light, Yun Yang turned around with his hands behind his back and returned to his original position. Hong Changtian, on the other hand, maintained his posture of thrusting his sword and stood motionless. With a soft crack, the sword in Hong Changtian's hand broke from the middle, and the 2.5-foot blade fell to the ground. Then a thin bloodstain appeared on Hong Changtian's forehead. The bloodstain gradually expanded, covering his forehead in an instant. After a puff, blood spurted out from his hairline, and Hong Changtian's body was split into two with a crash. Probably because the strike was too fast and too sharp, the two halves of his body were still standing for a while before they fell to the ground because they could not maintain their balance. Yun Yang's casual and straight slash had split Hong Changtian's body into two just like Luo Dajiang's strike. Because the speed of the strike was so fast, Hong Changtian's body did not separate until Yun Yang had turned and walked hundreds of feet away. By the time Hong Changtian's body had fallen to the ground, Yun Yang had already returned to his position. His eyes were as calm as before, his handsome face devoid of any expression. The master of the Residence of 9 Supremes did not show any joy, as if everything that had happened was expected and within his control. There was nothing to be surprised about. On both sides, all the people from the 8 sects, including Hui Yunfeng and his 2 companions, were once again dumbfounded and speechless. Their mouths were agape and they could not breathe for a long time. Everyone's eyes were filled with disbelief. One slash, another slash. It was the end of another slash. Luo Dajiang's slash was full of dominance and power, while Yun Yang's slash was effortless, as if it came from the back of his hand. That kind of understatement, natural and smooth feeling could be said to be felt by everyone present. Yun Yang's saber appeared in his hand as if it had appeared out of thin air, and then disappeared without a sound. The impact of the scene was even greater. From beginning to end, this saber seemed to come from nowhere, and it also didn't know where it ended. Only a flash of saber light could be seen, and everything came to an end. The Residence of 9 Supremes wins the match of sect leaders. Hui Yunfeng's voice was hoarse and bitter. I've lost 3 matches in a row and the match is over. My 120 Supreme Grade Spiritual Jades. I've lost so easily. This is 2F** King Unreal. Have I really done too many wicked things? No way. It can't be. As the verdict was announced, Hong Changtian came back to life on the spot like the previous 2 people, but he stood there in a daze, speechless for a long time. His eyes were dull and he looked like a walking corpse. Subconsciously he took 2 steps forward, then suddenly burst into a howl and burst into tears. The Celestial Luck Banner was gone. From now on, Qingwu Union no longer had the Celestial Luck Banner, and it no longer had the capital to be proud of itself. It had become an ordinary sect in the martial arts world. If they wanted to take back the celestial luck banner, Hong Changtian closed his eyes, tears streaming down his cheeks. The Residence of Nine Supremes has won 3 matches in the lower-class Celestial Luck Banner Challenge and is promoted to the ranks of the lower-class Celestial Luck Banner sections. Hui Yunfeng's voice was extremely hoarse, as if he had just eaten shit. Congratulations to the Residence of Nine Supremes and sect leader Yun. Everyone looked at Yun Yang with a complicated look in their eyes. The same thought rose in the minds of everyone: the wolf is coming. The fighting strength of the Residence of Nine Supremes seemed to be too terrifying. Hong Changtian returned to his seat in a daze as if he was sleepwalking. What greeted him was the dull and sorrowful eyes of everyone in the sect. We've lost? Hong Changtian took a deep breath. Let's go. Since they had lost, there was no point in staying here except to suffer more humiliation. Sect leader Hong, please wait. Yun Yang's voice came slowly. What else do you want to do? Hong Changtian gritted his teeth. In the face of this young man who had killed the glory of Kangwu Union for 1,000 years, he did not even want to pretend the most basic demeanor. We still have 2 matches to fight. Yun Yang said with a faint smile. Don't we still have a match of formations and a match of disciples? As soon as he said that, the people from Thousand Mountains sect, which ranked 8th, tensed up, their bodies stiffened. Even the people from Illusory Sword sect, which ranked 7th, shuddered. They could not believe that the Residence of Nine Supremes was unwilling to give up and still wanted to win all the matches. What did they want to do? Their goal was obviously to take advantage of the bald lice on the head of the louse. It was obvious. Chapter 1080. Hong Changtian glared at Yun Yang and said hatefully, Yun Yang, don't go too far when we meet again in the future. I advise you not to go too far. Yun Yang replied coldly, too much? I only know that this is the rule and I can't go beyond the rule. Residence of Nine Supremes has never taken the last place in the lower-class Celestial Luck Banner seriously. What do you want to do has anything to do with us? Hong Changtian cried angrily. Yun Yang's face turned amiable as he smiled and said, has sect leader Hong lost his mind? Or are you deliberately playing dumb? Let me make it clearer. The rule is that if we want to continue the challenge, we need to win all 5 matches. Of course, we have to fight all 5 matches. If you don't want to fight, you can say it here and admit defeat in the remaining 2 matches. We need to win all 5 matches and continue the challenge. Hong Changtian said gloomily, it's impossible for me to admit defeat. Yun Yang smiled and said, if you don't want to admit defeat, then let's fight. What else is there to say? Hong Changtian's eyes were bloodshot. When he turned his head to look, he saw that his disciples were all dejected and their eyes were blank. Everyone's spirit seemed to have disappeared with the consecutive defeats in the previous 3 matches. Are these still my disciples? They were clearly a group of walking corpses who had lost their minds and souls. Usually, out of their wits was just an adjective, but at this moment, it was the most appropriate description. Hong Changtian gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, Residence of Nine Supremes insists on continuing the fight. Who will defeat their disciples? All the disciples looked at each other, and no one dared to say anything for a long time. Yu Qingfeng. Hong Changtian simply called out his name. Yu Qingfeng was the sect leader's disciple of Kangwu Union, as well as the #1 expert among its disciples. In the crowd, a handsome young man with a pale face looked up and said blankly, the Celestial Luck Banner has been lost. What's the point of fighting or not, winning or losing this match? May I ask, sect leader, what's the point of this match? Yu Qingfeng looked up with tears on his face. Is it for the honor of our sect? Or is it for the survival of the Celestial Luck Banner? Or is it just to stop Residence of Nine Supremes from winning all the matches? Hong Changtian was enraged. We are martial artists. How can we be afraid of battle? The opponent has already challenged us. Don't tell me that Kangwu's disciples don't even have the courage? With tears streaming down his face, he said, this match is futile. I'd rather help Residents of Nine Supremes and let them challenge for a higher position. The advancement of the Celestial Luck Banner's rank has been my dream for a long time. It's a pity that I haven't been able to wait for this opportunity after all these years. Since the Residence of Nine Supremes has such a lofty ambition, I don't want to let others' dreams fall under my sword. My dream is already difficult to achieve. I hope that someone in the future can obtain this special honor. Before his voice had died away, Yu Qingfeng leaped into the ring and announced loudly, I'm Yu Qingfeng from Kangwu faction, and I'm representing Kangwu faction in this disciple battle. Then he straightened his body and shouted, I admit defeat. Before his voice could fade away, Yu Qingfeng threw his head back and laughed wildly. My long-cherished wish in my life is to participate in the battle of inner disciples as the representative of Kangwu Union. I want to fight for the promotion of our sect once in this arena. I didn't expect that when I finally stand here, all I want to do is admit defeat. But no matter what, this disciple will die here once. Yu Qingfeng choked with tears and snot. Then he slashed the long sword in his hand across his neck. With a puff, Yu Qingfeng's head shot up into the sky, spinning in the air. It could be said that Yu Qingfeng had used all of his strength in this sword strike. The head flew more than 100 feet into the air and fell down after dozens of breaths. The moment it rolled on the ground, its white teeth opened and closed and it bit the ground hard. At this point, the head finally stopped moving. However, this situation could be said to be extremely tragic. Everyone was shocked by this. The disciples of Kangwu Union were dumbfounded as they looked at the corpse that stood still in the arena. Hui Yunfeng sighed and said, Kangwu Union has such a disciple, but it doesn't have a worthy elder. What a pity. There was a flash of light. Yu Qingfeng came back to life with his head back, but he stood there in a daze for a long time. Then, with a wild laugh, he walked toward his junior brothers and sisters without looking back. When he reached the crowd, he kept his head down and did not say a word, but tears kept flowing down his cheeks. Formation match. Hong Changtian was furious. Everyone in Kangwu Union will fight with all our strength. We won't let residents of 9 Supremes win easily. Gao Danyun heaved a long sigh and said, Our sect has no hope in a formation match. We admit defeat. Changtian, let's go. Don't make a fool of yourself here. Others can snatch the position of Supremes from us, and we may be able to snatch it back from them in the future. There's no need to be obsessed now. Then he shouted, Kangwu Union admits defeat. We won't start the formation match. On the high platform, Hui Yunfeng said, Kangwu Union has lost 2 matches, and residents of 9 Supremes has won all 5 matches. Everyone in Kangwu Union, you can leave now, he said coldly. Yu Qingfeng suddenly stood up and said loudly, This disciple wants to watch the match here and see how far residents of 9 Supremes can go. May I ask your permission, honorable emissary? Whether or not there will be a battle later is the Celestial Luck sect's business, Hui Yunfeng said coldly. You have lost the Celestial Luck banner, so you are no longer qualified to stay here. What right do mere ants have to watch the battle between experts above the clouds? With a wave of his sleeve he said, Leave now. Hong Changtian bowed his head and beckoned his disciples to leave. Everyone had gone far away, but Yu Qingfeng still stood straight in his place, staring at the flat square in front of him with a look of longing in his eyes. Qingfeng. Hong Changtian turned around and shouted. Yu Qingfeng closed his eyes and 2 more drops of tears fell to the ground. Then he turned and flew away without looking back. The people from his own sect didn't even stop when they passed by. They didn't even look at him, they just swaggered off. On the high platform, Hui Yunfeng said, The winner of the Celestial Luck banner is blessed by the Celestial Luck banner. People of residents of 9 Supremes, please take your seats. The so-called seats meant that the people of residents of 9 Supremes could climb to the empty grandstand that originally belonged to Kangwu Union. Yun Yang waved his hand and said faintly, Let's clean up. A stream of sparkling and bright water appeared out of thin air as if responding to a summon. It quickly washed all the seats clean. Let's go. Let's go to the place where we are temporarily. It's definitely not the place where we will stay. The disciples were extremely excited as they followed their masters forward. As they moved forward, they were full of spirit and pride. Shi Wuchen and the others looked at the empty platform, and their eyes were red with envy. The Celestial Luck banner. We finally got it. Chapter 1081. When everyone was seated, the shadow of the Celestial Luck banner suddenly emerged over the residents of 9 Supremes. It flickered and then disappeared. The next moment, a pure black Celestial Luck banner with the words Residents of 9 Supremes appeared in the sky. As the banner fluttered in the wind, the shadow of a black Celestial Luck banner appeared over the heads of everyone in the Residents of 9 Supremes. However, the strange phenomenon only lasted for a moment before it disappeared, leaving only the black Celestial Luck banner still fluttering in the wind over the Residents of 9 Supremes. Hui Yunfeng looked at the fluttering Celestial Luck banner from a distance and said faintly, If the Celestial Luck banner falls, the title will be decided, and there will be another chance to challenge it 3 years later. Now that the Celestial Luck banner has not fallen, do you want to continue the challenge, Supreme Lord Yun? Yes, Yun Yang said. Residents of 9 Supremes wishes to challenge Thousand Mountains sect, which has a higher position than the lower-class Celestial Luck banner. You have the record of winning all 5 matches, so you don't need anyone's permission to challenge it, Hui Yunfeng said. Du Yangfan, sect leader of Thousand Mountains sect, do you have any objection to this match? This is the rule of the Celestial Luck banner, Du Yangfan said with a smile. Thousand Mountains sect will not be afraid of any challenge. In that case, let the match begin, Hui Yunfeng said. But, as the challenged party, Thousand Mountains sect has the right to modify the order of the matches, Du Yangfan said. This is your right and it should be so, Hui Yunfeng said. We'll choose the match of disciples as the first match, followed by the match of backbone, and then the match of formations. The 4th match will be a match of free will and we can choose any way we want. The 5th match will be the match between the strongest experts of our sect. What do you think, sect leader Yun? Do you have any objection? Yun Yang said with a big smile on his face, whatever you say. The order of the matches has nothing to do with the grand decree. We, residents of 9 Supremes, will accept it. As soon as the decision was made, the people from the other sects on the side smiled at the same time. This sect leader of Thousand Mountains sect is quite cunning. After the first round of battle, residents of 9 Supremes had already sent out 3 people, and all of them possessed extraordinary strength. Among them, sect leader Yun Yang was the strongest, followed by Luo Dajiang. Judging from the power these 2 men had shown, not only Thousand Mountains sect, but also several sects with lower-class celestial luck banners ranked at the bottom were no match for them. Therefore, as long as residents of 9 Supremes sent these 2 men to fight in the match of sect leaders and the match of the strongest experts in the 5 matches of the Celestial Luck banner, they would almost certainly win 2 matches. In this way they had already won 2 out of the 5 matches. How could Thousand Mountains sect not be in danger? However, Du Yangfan was able to find an opportunity to win by following the established rules. First was Shi Wuchen. Although his performance in the previous battles was not weak, it was not too good either. At least there were many people in Thousand Mountains sect who could defeat him. And the first match, the match of disciples, was the key to Du Yangfan's plan. As far as the current situation was concerned, Shi Wuchen was not the weakest in residents of 9 Supremes, but the group of disciples. There were only 10 of them in total and half of them were Lolitas. It could be seen that the number of disciples and residents of 9 Supremes was very small. Although each of them seemed to have extraordinary aptitude, residents of 9 Supremes was just a newly established sect, and even Yun Yang was not that young. Therefore these children had only started cultivating for a short period of time, and their overall strength was bound to be weak. Therefore the match of disciples was not a 50-50 chance of winning, but Thousand Mountains sect had a higher chance of winning. Moreover, as long as residents of 9 Supremes won this match, no matter what happened in the future, it would be disqualified from challenging the other sects, and all the higher-ranked sects would have to thank Thousand Mountains sect for buying them at least 3 years of time. It was a great favor that they had to accept. Moreover, Du Yangfan had deliberately left the match of the strongest to the last, and replaced the match of sect leaders with the match of free will, which had never been heard of before. His ultimate goal was to cripple residents of 9 Supreme's strongest fighting force. If they won the first 3 matches, there was no need for them to fight anymore. Even though residents of 9 Supremes had 2 trump cards and 2 winning cards, it was useless. Of course, the main reason why Du Yangfan was confident that he could win the first 3 matches was the 3rd match of formations. As everyone knew, Thousand Mountains sect had a hidden formation that was invincible among those of the same level. It was also because of this formation called the 7 Stars formation that Thousand Mountains sect had established itself as the foundation of lower-class celestial luck banners. It could be said to be the foundation of Thousand Mountains sect. In this way the match of formations was a sure win. The chance of winning the match of disciples was almost certain. As long as they won these 2 matches and defeated Shi Wuchen by the experts of the sect, the result would be set. No matter how strong residents of 9 Supremes is, you can only wait for 3 years. Even if your disciples are strong enough to defeat us 3 years later, you will still be helpless in the match of formations. The higher-ranked sects will have to appreciate your kindness, but if you want to climb to a higher position, you will have to wait for 6 or 9 years. This is the biggest advantage of being the challenger and being the one who sets the rules. Du Yangfan could almost see Yun Yang and the people from the residents of 9 Supremes coming to him in high spirits and leaving with dejected faces, as well as the goodwill and benefits from the other sects with celestial luck banners. There were so many benefits that it was as if an immortal cake had fallen from the sky. Yes, it was the celestial flatbread. Only the celestial flatbread could describe the great benefits they would obtain after this battle. At this time, on the high platform, Hui Yunfeng, who was trying to maintain his demeanor, finished giving instructions for the upcoming matches. Then, his face darkened because two creditors were waiting for him. Ding Byuk and Yu Bunning bowed at the same time and said, "Thank you for your generosity, big brother. We'll gladly accept the 60 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jade." 60 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jade for each of them was equivalent to 120 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jade. No matter how rich Hui Yunfeng was, he could not help but feel the pain of taking out 120 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jade at once. The man rolled his eyes and an idea came to him immediately. "You won the bet in the previous round and that's not a lie. I'm willing to accept the loss so I won't go back on my word. But, are you going to run away as soon as you win? You won't do that, will you? Now that Residence of Nine Supremes is challenging Thousand Mountains sect, why don't we have another bet?" Ding Byuk and Yu Bunning sighed at the same time. This guy is clearly using this opportunity to make a comeback. "If I win, I don't care if I'm a bastard or not. How do you want to bet, big brother? Are you still the banker? What are the odds?" "How can I always be the banker? Let's bet on the outcome of the match." Hui Yunfeng gritted his teeth and said, "Since you are so united, you must be on the same side. Just tell me which side you want to bet on." After carefully calculating the strength of Residence of Nine Supremes and Du Yangfan's arrangement for the match, they turned to look at the few little disciples of Residence of Nine Supremes. Among the disciples of Residence of Nine Supremes, the one ranked first was a pretty little girl. She looked pretty and cute, but could she fight well? They were bound to lose the match of disciples. Chapter 1082. In the following battles of formations, Thousand Mountains sect had never lost in terms of battle formations, even when they fought against the few sects that ranked near the top of the lower-class celestial luck banners. As for the battles of the backbone forces and the battles of free will, the ambition of the wolves was still vivid in everyone's mind, and the odds of victory and defeat were obvious. "We bet on Thousand Mountains sect. After all, they are an old sect." Ding Byuk and Yu could not make a decision immediately. Hui Yunfeng flew into a rage and shouted, "You can't bully Thousand Mountains sect. Could it be that all of you are bent on making me bankrupt? You two have no conscience. You just won over 100 pieces of top-grade spiritual jades from me, and now you want to take advantage of me. Do you have any brotherhood?" When the two of them heard this, they fainted at the same time. "You are still betting on the Residence of Nine Supremes this round," Hui Yunfeng said. "Each of us will bet 60 pieces of supreme-grade spirit jades. It's settled. I have the final say." The two of them were stunned on the spot. After a while they said, "Big brother, you can't play like this. You're forcing the innocent to gamble." 1-2. Hui Yunfeng gritted his teeth. The two of them shook their heads repeatedly. Not doing it, not even if the compensation is 1-2. 1-3, that's my bottom line. If you still don't want to do it, then forget it, Hui Yunfeng said. It seems that our friendship of several thousand years is over." His face was livid and he was obviously very angry. Ding Byuk and Yu Bunning sighed helplessly. "What should we do now? He's obviously trying to win it back. Who doesn't know that? Just tell us what we should do, alright? So, why don't we just leave it like this? It's better to let him win it back. Otherwise, when we go back, we'll have to look at his ugly face for decades. After all, we're together all the time and see each other all the time. Alright, I was happy for nothing today. Everything about this big brother was good. He was loyal and always took care of his brothers, but he was too greedy. Their eyes were filled with spirit jades and precious materials, and anyone who saw them would immediately have a fever. After the two finished their discussion, they turned around and agreed, "Each of us will bet 60 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jade. You must remember that the compensation is 1-3. Of course. Hui Yunfeng immediately beamed with joy. Victory was already in his grasp. So what if the odds were 1-3? He was just putting on a show to save some face. "Big brother. If we win, you have to pay each of us 180 pieces of supreme-grade equipment." Ding Byuk was still worried and reminded him again. These words had to be said clearly. Otherwise, with boss's temper, he might just give you a 1-3 compensation ratio for your opponent. This was a conversation between the two of them based on their experiences, and it was a painful experience. If we want to gamble, we have to gamble on fairness. Why would I cheat you of your money? If Residence of Nine Supremes wins, I'll give each of you 180 pieces, and if it loses, each of you will give me 60 pieces of supreme grade. That's a deal. Yu Bunning once again clarified the main point, your 180 yuan must also be of the highest quality. You only said 180 pieces of low-grade spiritual jades. What if we win and you give us 180 pieces of low-grade spiritual jades? Isn't that fair? Hui Yunfeng looked embarrassed as he said, damn it. You don't trust me at all. Both of them stared at him as if they were used to it. Hui Yunfeng gritted his teeth for a while and said, fine, as long as Residence of 9 Supremes wins, you win, and I'll pay each of you 180 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jades. But if Residence of 9 Supremes loses, you lose, and each of you will lose 60 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jades. Is that okay? It's a deal. It's a deal? At last, the three brothers came to an agreement, and a new round of gambling officially began. Ding Byuk and Yu Bunning were still worried. Although both of them knew that the chances of them losing this battle were very high, it was not entirely hopeless. And if they won, once they won, their eldest brother Hui Yunfeng would go bankrupt. The 120 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jades from the previous round, plus the 360 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jades in this round, added up to nearly 500 pieces of supreme-grade spiritual jades, which was almost an astronomical fortune. At that time, what would happen to the two of them? Down below, Du Yangfan and Yun Yang were staring at the high platform. Both of their faces were full of doubt. What's wrong with these three stewards? Why do they always whisper to each other for a while before the match starts? This is our match and it has nothing to do with you. You are just nominal hosts, okay? Why are you so hesitant? The first match was a match between disciples. Yun Yang turned sideways and gestured with a smile. Sect leader Du, I've just arrived here and know nothing about the mode of the match between disciples. May I ask how the match should be carried out? Should it be a one-on-one duel? Or should it be a one-on-one fight? Should it be a best of 5 or a best of 3? Or should it be a best of 7 or a best of 9? All of these are fine. You can just pick the one that you think is more likely to win. I really don't care. I can accept any of the above modes. Laughter rang out in an instant. It was obvious that Yun Yang was mocking Du Yangfan for not daring to fight him head-on, and for avoiding the strong and attacking the weak in the battle formation. Du Yangfan's face turned red instantly. He was, after all, a sect leader and he cared a lot about his reputation. His voice turned cold as he said, Sect leader Yun, I think you're more inclined to that mode. We'll fight however you want. When has our Thousand Mountains sect ever feared any enemy? Yun Yang laughed and said, if that's the case, Yun Xiuxin. Yun Xiuxin's heart was already itching. Upon hearing his words, she strode forward and said, yes, sect leader. Her voice was crisp, but there was a hint of childishness in it that could not be concealed. Go and have a good taste of the skills of the senior brothers in Thousand Mountains sect, so that you won't be arrogant in your own home and be a frog in a well, Yun Yang ordered with a straight face. Yes, sect leader. Yun Xiuxin was dressed in a snow-white dress, with only a light purple belt around her waist. Coupled with her petite body, she looked like a fairy floating leisurely in the clouds as she walked down the stage. Her features were picturesque, and her beauty was indescribable. All the people outside Residence of 9 Supremes sighed in unison when they saw such a beautiful girl. Why is such a delicate little girl sent to fight? Judging from her appearance, she was probably not even 15 years old yet. What does Residence of 9 Supremes mean by sending this little girl? Are they giving up on the first match? On the opposite side, a few disciples of Thousand Mountains sect looked eager to have a go. This kind of little girl is definitely the best. If he was the one fighting, he would definitely have to be merciful and not hurt him too much. In the process of sparring, he would have to show his magnanimity as much as possible. If he returned victorious, he would have to look good. Perhaps in the future, Let me go, master. Han Kongchuan, the eldest disciple of Thousand Mountains sect, said with a serious face, Residence of 9 Supremes is here for a reason, and I don't think they will send an ordinary disciple for no reason. They must have a purpose. We can't be deceived by their appearance. We can't underestimate the enemy in this match. What Han Kongchuan said was reasonable. As the eldest disciple of the sect leader, he should be sent to fight the match. However, the other disciples twitched their mouths and thought, damn it, who are you trying to show off your sanctimonious face to? We're all on the same side and we know each other best. Who doesn't know that you're a lecher? You can't wait to put every beautiful girl under your quilt, and now you're putting on such a righteous and fearless attitude. Who would believe that you're not trying to take advantage of them? Everyone looked at him with disdain. Well, let Kongchuan fight then, Du Yangfan said. As you said, since Residence of Nine Supremes has sent this little girl to fight, she must have a reason to do so. We can't be careless. We must win this match. Han Kongquan could not help but smile. Yes, master. I'll do my best and not fail you, he said cheerfully. This is a big win, he thought to himself. This match is indeed crucial. I'll make a name for myself in front of the heroes of the world, and I might even win the hearts of beautiful girls. At the very least, this little girl should be able to sense whether I've shown mercy or not. She's such a beauty and she's not a fool. This little girl is really beautiful. If I can hold this little body in my arms and enjoy it at night, inch by inch, how tender she is. Han Kongquan's mind was filled with wild thoughts. Then he strode up into the air with his hands clasped behind his back. His clothes fluttered in the wind as he drifted out in an extremely elegant manner. Han Kongquan's lightness skill was indeed extraordinary. His whole body floated forward slowly in the air as if there was something under his feet. His tall figure, black hair fluttering in the wind, a handsome face, a sharp nose, double eyelids, a square face, gentle eyes, and a black robe made him look even more elegant and graceful. Yun Yang praised, "This disciple of Thousand Mountains sect does have a good appearance and skin. What an elegant demeanor. What an outstanding talent." His voice was loud and clear, so loud that everyone could hear it. Han Kongquan, who was hovering in midair, naturally heard it as well. The young man's lightness skill was truly extraordinary. He turned around in midair and cupped his fists with a big smile on his face. "Thank you for the compliment, Master Yun. I'm Han Kongquan, and I hope you can guide me in the future." Yun Yang nodded slightly and said, "You're well-mannered and courteous. Not bad indeed. Sect leader Du, your sect leader's disciple, the successor of your legacy, is really enviable. He is truly extraordinary." Du Yangfan's face had turned dark. "Han Kongquan, what are you trying to do? If you want to fight, just fight. Why are you acting like a show-off? Is this a place where you can act cool? But now, before the fight even started, I've already lost a part of my mystical chi to act cool for no reason. Do you know what cultivation base your opponent has? How could you be so arrogant? This is simply..." When he heard Yun Yang's compliment, his heart was filled with mixed feelings. He could not tell what he was feeling, but in order to maintain his demeanor, he ground his teeth and said, "You're overpraising me, Master Yun. My disciple is just showing off his slight skill in front of an expert and making a fool of himself for no reason. Master Yun's disciple is the real pearl of immortal dew." Yun Yang said with a smile, "As the saying goes, even if one were to die under a peony flower, one would still be a romantic even as a ghost." I didn't expect sect leader to be someone who cherishes flowers. Du Yangfan almost coughed out a mouthful of blood. How could he not be so heart-wrenching? Du Yangfan almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. In the arena, Han Kongquan smiled and said, "If I heard correctly just now, this junior sister's name is Yun Xiaoxin, isn't it? What a good name. She's a beauty in the clouds, beautiful, intelligent, and charming. What a good name, what a good name." Yun Xiaoxin was stunned. What's wrong with this guy? Is he here to fight? Why was he acting so strangely the moment he arrived? Both of us are enemies, so why is he acting so arrogant with his hands clasped behind his back? Is he really so confident? The little girl was only 13 years old now, so how could she know anything about the relationship between a man and a woman? Moreover, she did not understand that this guy was only using a trick to pick up girls. All she could think about was winning or losing, and how she would brag about it when she returned. Now that she saw him acting so casually, she could not help but overthink. "Yes, my name is pretty good, but your name, Han Kongquan, doesn't seem to be a good name," the little girl said. When Han Kongquan heard Yun Xiaoxin's clear and tender voice and looked at her tender little face up close, his heart melted instantly. "What's wrong with it?" he asked. "Your name is Han Kongquan," Yun Xiaoxin said. "Does it mean that you are cold and lifeless? Because of your coldness, the whole herd of wild boars is empty. They are either frozen to death or caught and eaten. What's so good about this name? It's not auspicious at all." The little girl shook her head and looked at Han Kongquan sympathetically. "Senior brother, you'd better go back and change your name. Even Han Air sounds better than Han Kongquan." The corner of Han Kongquan's mouth twitched as he said, "Junior sister Xiaoxin is so funny." Yun Xiaoxin grew impatient. With a swish, she drew her sword and cried out, "Let's begin." With a smile on his face, Han Kongquan pressed his hand on the hilt of his sword and said, "Junior sister Xiaoxin, how old are you this year? What's wrong with you?" Yun Xiaoxin said angrily, "Are you going to fight or not?" "Cut the crap." Han Kongquan said with a smile, "What's the harm in talking first? It's not too late to fight later." Yun Xiaoxin rolled her eyes and said, "I don't have time for that. If you don't want to fight, I'll fight." Before her voice could fade away, she suddenly drew a huge sword flower with her sword, and her body flew up into the air. Abruptly, a burst of sword light shot out from the flower, turning into a gorgeous shooting star that streaked across the sky. The ray of light flashed and disappeared. Yun Xiaoxin had already made her move, but Han Kongquan was still making his pose. His jade-like face, bright eyes, and the look in his eyes were extremely gentle and warm. Coupled with his fluttering robe, he looked like an immortal. Just his appearance alone would make ordinary girls and wives drool at the first sight of him, and it would not be difficult for them to throw themselves into his arms and sleep with him. In fact, it was with this appearance that Han Kongquan had won many beauties in the past. However, at this moment Han Kongquan had miscalculated and lost the entire game. Baidu search for the novel website of Yunlai Pavilion, allowing you to experience the latest and fastest updates of the novel. Chapter 1083. Han Kongquan's current appearance was indeed very good, and he was invincible when it came to dealing with women, or rather, ordinary women. As the saying went, girls love to be handsome. However, the person Han Kongquan was facing now was not a woman at all. Not only was she not a woman, but she was probably not even a young girl. At best, she was a little girl. She did not seem to have the ability to appreciate as a woman, and she did not even have the taste to appreciate. All the postures Han Kongquan had made were nothing to Yun Xiaoxin, or perhaps she was just being vigilant. The calmer and more relaxed he appeared, the more Yun Xiaoxin felt that he was difficult to deal with. So, she raised her fighting spirit to 120%. Not only would she not be interested, but she would also go to an unprecedented extreme. The opponent might be a strong enemy she had never seen before, so she had to go all out and do everything she could. Based on this mentality, Yun Xiaoxin took the fight seriously like never before. She struck immediately, gathering all the strength she had in her life and exerted extreme measures. Sword flower grows shooting stars, meteor destruction. The little girl had become one with her sword, and the moment she struck, she used her strongest move. It was also the first move of Saber Truth, merciless blade that Yun Yang had taught her before. She used her ultimate move. So Han Kongquan was in a tragedy. In terms of his real cultivation base, he should be almost on par with Yun Xiaoxin. Even though Yun Xiaoxin was a little stronger, they were still at the same level in terms of overall evaluation. With such a cultivation base at such a young age, he could definitely be regarded as a young genius and a heaven's favored one. If he calmed down and fought with Yun Xiaoxin, it would not be a problem for him to exchange 100 or so moves with her in order to determine the winner. Even with his much richer combat experience than Yun Xiaoxin, it was still uncertain who would win in the end. This was also the reason why he looked so relaxed. His strong combat strength was the source of his confidence. He was even confident that there were few opponents who could be on par with him among the disciples of the same generation. Therefore, it was not wrong for Yun Xiaoxin to feel that he was full of confidence, that victory was in his grasp, and that everything was under his control. However, he still made a very fatal mistake, underestimating the enemy. Han Kongquan was a genius, but he was too young and inexperienced. Moreover, Yun Xiaoxin's appearance was too deceiving. At first glance, she looked like a gentle and weak little girl of about 13 or 14 years of age. She had a fair complexion, delicate and lovely, soft and tender, and a face full of childishness. She was extremely delicate, making one feel pity for her. Not to mention a young man like Han Kongquan, 9 out of 10 men in the pugilistic Jianghu would want to take the little girl home, love her, or keep her as a slave for a long time. Han Kongquan, who was a lecherous man on the outside but a lecherous man on the inside, was naturally not an exception. It could be said that the moment he saw Yun Xiaoxin, he had already fallen in love with her. Otherwise, he would not have to make such a concave pose. But, just when he thought he was having a banquet with Yun Xiaoxin and chatting with her, the girl, who was as beautiful as a pearl, suddenly turned hostile and attacked him. Han Kongquan had never seen such a horrifying move in his life. It was a move that he had never seen in his life. As the sword light flashed, Yun Xiaoxin's figure was nowhere to be seen. Han Kongquan's hand was still on the hilt of his sword, but he did not draw it out. He was still posing there, looking around with great interest. Slow? In the face of the approaching force, he only had time to let out a cry, but Yun Xiaoxin had already rushed past him with her sword. Yes, it had charged through his body. The tip of the sword touched Han Kongquan's body first, piercing and breaking it. Perhaps it was because Yun Xiaoxin's attack was so fierce and fast that she took the opportunity to rush past Han Kongquan. Han Kongquan was still hovering in midair, still maintaining his elegant posture. However, the expression on his face had turned into one of disbelief and fear. There was a large hole in his chest and abdomen. It was called a large hole, but it was actually only the size of a bowl. It was round and transparent, and from here one could see Yun Xiaoxin, who had just rushed past him, rushing forward in the air uncontrollably in her white dress. The girl was still beautiful, thin and petite, but now no one would think that she was weak and easy to bully anymore. The result of the attack was clear. Han Kongquan's vision darkened, and as he fell to the ground he glanced at her, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and a strange thought came to his mind: what a slender waist. Then the man who had fallen to the ground no longer felt anything. On the other side, the face of Du Yangfan, the sect leader of Thousand Mountains sect, was as dark as the bottom of a pot, and he looked like an active volcano that was about to erupt. On the other side, Yun Yang sighed and said faintly, "What a pity. Elder brother Han is the best in terms of character and demeanor, but he has underestimated his enemy too much. If he hadn't underestimated his opponent, the outcome of this battle would still be uncertain and difficult to predict. What a pity, what a pity." It would have been better if Yun Yang had not spoken. As he said that, Du Yangfan felt that the breath in his stomach was about to rush out. If this breath really rushed out of his stomach, he was afraid that he would immediately explode like a barrel of gunpowder. At the same time, Han Kongquan had regained his senses and was full of energy. With a blank face, he looked down at his chest, then at Yun Xiaoxin, who had gone back to report happily to her master. She was chattering and gesticulating about something in front of her master. The battle was over. But Han Kongquan suddenly felt a towering sense of anger and humiliation that he had never felt before. He stomped his feet and roared, "B*****! How dare you use a honey trap on me? Come out now. Come out now. I'm going to cut you into 1,000 pieces." He roared and yelled as if there was no one else in the arena, his face filled with anger as he was humiliated. Then he heard a voice on the high platform that was several times angrier than his, bellowing, "The outcome has been decided. Get out of here now." It was Hui Yunfeng's voice. At this moment, Hui Yunfeng's anger was overflowing, and he could no longer suppress it. If he were not limited by his status as the steward, he might have skinned this Han Kongquan alive. "Damn it. You didn't do it on purpose, did you? You actually wanted me to spend an astronomical amount of supreme-grade spiritual jade on purpose, didn't you? How dare you underestimate your enemy in the battle of the Celestial Luck Banner, which concerns the future of the two sects? How dare you have the guts to have lust in such a serious occasion? You're more than just lustful. How long have you not seen a woman? How thirsty and lonely are you? Let me ask you, how many F***king lifetimes have you not seen a woman? How many F***king lifetimes have you not seen a woman? How could someone be pierced through the heart by a sword while standing still? What the F***ck? Chapter 1084. Han Kongquan was still fuming with rage. Just as he was about to argue, a figure suddenly appeared behind him. Then the man kicked him and said in a furious and aggrieved tone, "Go. Go to hell." It was none other than Hui Yunfeng. Han Kongquan was kicked flying into the air and smashed into the high platform of Thousand Mountains sect with a loud bang. No one knew whether it was because of the sudden turn of events that the crowd could not react in time or because Han Kongquan was not very popular, but no one picked him up. He smashed hard on the steps and rolled down. Then he screamed like a pig being slaughtered. The crowd was shocked and stunned. Who is this? How dare he beat someone up? Isn't he looking down on everyone here? And why is he so angry and aggrieved? Why are you so angry and aggrieved? Who is he? Everyone looked over and saw Deacon Hui Yunfeng standing proudly in the middle of the arena. Looking around, he said in a cold voice, "Attention everyone. Once the outcome of the battle is decided, you must leave the arena immediately. Don't delay and don't speak rudely. If anyone violates this rule again, not only will the person be expelled from the arena, but his sect will also be expelled from the arena." As soon as he said that, all the people present kept quiet out of fear. It turned out that the deacon had lost his temper. Obviously, Han Kongquan's behavior just now had crossed the deacon's bottom line. They had to take it as a warning. In fact, it made sense. Han Kongquan's behavior just now was really infuriating. No wonder he had provoked the deacon to attack him. However, many people had more doubts in their minds. Over the years, as the deacon of the Golden Palace, Hui Yunfeng has come to preside over the competition several times, and it's not like he has never lost his temper before. Not only did he lose his temper this time, but he also cursed someone. This is a little unusual. After saying that, Hui Yunfeng went back without saying another word. But the people of Thousand Mountains sect felt ashamed. How could there be any glory in this? Their eldest senior brother, eldest disciple and eldest grand disciple had all been defeated, and they were cursed by the deacon who had almost brought disaster to their entire sect. This matter was simply, Han Kongquan calmed down and came to Du Yangfan timidly. But before he could say anything to defend himself, Du Yangfan's face darkened and he growled angrily in a low voice, "Get the hell out of here." Beside him, Yun Yang said amiably, "Sai, sect leader Du, it was only a moment of carelessness on your disciple's part just now. Why must you be so harsh? Young people are inevitably lacking in experience. After today's battle they will definitely be more perfect. Taking 10,000 steps back, your disciple's strength is not weak at all. At least, in my opinion, he is even stronger than my disciple. This battle is really not a crime of fighting, it is an unfair victory. If they were to fight again, it is still unknown who would be the winner." At this point he took the opportunity to nod at Han Kongquan and said, "Brother Han, please don't take it to heart. Victory and defeat are common in battles. You didn't lose this battle because of your strength, but because of your lack of experience. It's a great lesson for you." At this moment, Du Yangfan felt a sweetness in his throat, and he nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. Victory and defeat are commonplace? How can the battle in your family have anything to do with the ranking of the celestial luck banners? Also, I don't think I'm seeing things. How old are you? It's still uncertain whether you're as old as that disappointing Han Kongquan. Don't you have the cheek to lecture me like an old man? The second match. Hui Yunfeng's voice was filled with indescribable gloom. It was like a volcano that was about to erupt. "I'm so aggrieved. I'm even more aggrieved than Thousand Mountains sect. Thousand Mountains sect can still vent their anger, but I? Sect leader Yun, what do you think of the second match?" Du Yangfan looked at Yun Yang. The second match was supposed to be a match between the backbone. But now Du Yangfan wanted to change it to a match of formations. It was obvious that Han Kongquan's defeat had disrupted his plan, and he urgently needed a victory to stabilize the overall situation. He had to win the second match cleanly. Otherwise, the next 3 battles would all be fierce battles, and the kind where the chances of winning were slim. Yun Yang smiled gently and said, "As you wish. Didn't I say before that we'll fight according to sect leader Du's order?" His words were still conventional, but the sarcasm in his voice was thick and undisguised. As a sect with a higher ranking than residents of 9 Supremes, Du Yangfan's Thousand Mountains sect had devised a more favorable order of battle for them at the last minute. Although it was not very upright, it was still within the rules. But now they had changed their order at the last minute, which was tantamount to changing one's order in the morning. It was an unbearable behavior and there was no room for argument. Du Yangfan's face heated up. He turned to look at Yun Yang and pretended to be generous as he said, "Sect leader Yun, my sect has 7 people in total, which is a little too much. I hope you can forgive me. I'll apologize in advance." Yun Yang flashed a gentle smile. "Not at all, not at all. The art of a battle formation is to integrate everyone's combat power to fight. Your sect's battle formation only has 7 people, how could it be more? My residence's battle formation is made up of 9 people. I should be the one to apologize and apologize." Du Yangfan was taken aback. 9 people? *CK, you have more people than us. Do you want to send all of them? His expression changed abruptly as he said, "The number of people does not mean the strength of the fighting strength. The foundation of a battle formation depends on the cooperation." Yun Yang nodded slowly and said, "Sect leader Du is right. You've hit the nail on the head." Du Yangfan's face turned blue when he heard Yun Yang's words. He turned his head and said, 7 disciples, step forward." At Du Yangfan's order, the 7 young disciples of Thousand Mountains sect, led by Han Kongquan, took a step forward in unison. Yun Yang also turned to look at them and said, "Except for Lu Changman, the others take a step forward." Yun Xiuxin, Sun Mingxiu, Hu Xiaofan, Bai Yexing and the other 8 disciples stepped forward at the same time, leaving Lu Changman alone. Yun Yang glanced at them and said, "Sun Mingxiu, coordinate with us. Bai Yexing, attack freely. Yun Xiuxin, guard the 5th earth position and resist all the enemy's attacks." "Go." "Yes." The 9 disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes answered in unison and flew down together. Each of them was dressed in white, and as they flew out together, they floated down like a large group of white clouds. Only the purple belt around Yun Xiuxin's waist was the most dazzling, like a red dot in a sea of greenery. Han Kongquan stared at Yun Xiuxin with hatred in his eyes, which were filled with the cruel green of a hungry wolf. Without waiting for the sect leader's order, he waved his hand and flew down with his junior brothers, making no secret of his desire to start the battle as soon as possible. 7 Stars Formation. Han Kongquan cried out. As soon as the 7 disciples landed in the field, they had already lined up in the position of the Big Dipper. Han Kongquan's cultivation base was second to none among them, and he was in the position of Migres, the leader of the 7 stars. As soon as he got into the formation, he drew his sword and prepared to fight. Obviously he had learned his lesson from the fight just now. This time, before the battle began, he had his sword in his hand and dared not to be careless anymore. His killing intent was revealed. Killing formation. Han Kongquan looked sideways at Yun Xiuxin and whispered. Chapter 1085. When they heard Han Kongquan's words, a fierce gleam flashed across the eyes of the other 6 people. The study of formation Tao was divided into different categories, each with its own ingenuity. Generally speaking, it could be divided into maze formations, trap formations, and killing formations. The first type of maze formation was mainly used to block the target's 5 senses, and its lethality was relatively weak, so it was usually only used to block the enemy's way. The second type of trap formation was much more lethal than maze formation, and it used ingenious formations to enhance one's fighting strength while trapping and sealing the enemy. However, since this type of formation was called trapping, it naturally focused on trapping. The battle might be dangerous, but the goal was to win. When the outcome was clear, they would stop. This was also the common coping pattern used by Han Kongquan and others in the past. As for the third type of killing formation, it was the formation that was deduced to the most extreme and extreme degree. With just a thought, it was filled with murderous intent. It was a situation where there was no chance of survival. Even though the Battle of the Celestial Luck Banner had the magical effect of resurrection, anyone who suddenly experienced death would suffer a heavy blow to their mind. Many of those who had endured the blow would have their state of mind weakened, and their future cultivation path would be more bumpy and bumpy. This was especially true for the younger generation of disciples. No matter how talented they were, their state of mind was inevitably much inferior to that of adults. Many of them died prematurely and had no successor in their cultivation path. Therefore, unless it was necessary, the disciples of Thousand Mountains sect, who were known for their formation Tao, rarely used killing formations, lest they could not hold back and make enemies for no reason. What Han Kongquan said just now was equivalent to using this formation to kill the younger generation of disciples of residents of 9 Supremes. His intention was vicious. Yun Xiuxin, who was on the opposite side, cried out, "Battle formation of 9 peaks." As soon as Yun Xiuxin and the others landed on the ground, they quickly divided into 9 positions. The formation that the disciples of residents of 9 Supremes had arranged was obviously very different from the regular formation. Except for Sun Mingxiu, who was in the center, the other 8 formed a circle, with Yun Xiuxin in the lead, facing the opponent's 7 stars formation. Bai Yexing was 1 position away from Yun Xiuxin, and Hu Xiaofan was 1 position away from him. If there were only 3 of them, they would form a triangle. Unlike Han Kongquan's order in a low voice, Yun Xiuxin shouted with a murderous aura, "Battle formation of 9 peaks, killing formation." The little girl was full of murderous intent. "I'm invincible. Leave no one alive. Here." The 8 junior brothers and junior sisters answered in unison. Yun Yang, who was watching the battle from the spectator stand, was exasperated. What did the little girl mean by that? Invincible as long as I'm here, no one shall be spared? What do you mean by, "I am invincible"? On the other side, the faces of the 7 disciples of Thousand Mountains sect darkened. "We were only secretly arranging it, but you guys were so brazen." Han Kongquan furiously pointed his sword at them and said, "Spare no one? Not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. Let's see who gets annihilated." Almost at the same time, Yun Xiuxin pointed her fair and tender little finger impatiently and said, "Kill them." The 2 battle formations suddenly collided with each other in the next moment. It was also at this moment that Sun Mingxiu, who was surrounded by the 8 disciples of the 9 Supremes, suddenly let out a long hum, "Birds of the same breath and branches, a cold sword." Before his voice had died away, his hands had already stretched to the left and right. At the same time, Bai Yexing and Hu Xiaofan each took one of Sun Mingxiu's hands, while the other hand was placed on the shoulder of another junior brother next to him. while Qing Jiejia put one hand on Yun Xiuxin. Yun Xiuxin let out a fierce cry and thrust out her sword without moving. Han Kongquan, who had been fighting with formations for a long time, did not know that his opponent was using a gathering technique. He snorted disdainfully and said in a deep voice, "Stars scatter." The 7 stars battle formation regrouped. It seemed that the 7 people were running in all directions in a disorderly manner, but in fact, they had dodged the sharp edge of the residents of 9 Supremes formation and trapped the 9 disciples in their own formation. The so-called running in all directions was just a camouflage to regroup the formation. Your so-called drunken maniac battle formation only has one tip. How can it deal with the siege of 7 of us at the same time? In the formation of 9 peaks, Sun Mingxiu's eyes flickered with a faint smile as he said, "Sweep all before you." At the same time, the 8 disciples withdrew their hands, which were connected to the other disciples. However, this time he didn't just pull his hand back. At the instant he pulled his hand back, he struck out again. All of them struck out with their palms, but the power of these 8 palms was extraordinary. Such a powerful palm strike should not have been unleashed by a group of junior disciples. How could this be possible? The people from various sects were all experienced and knowledgeable, and their eyesight was sharp. They saw through the momentum in an instant, but they were puzzled. No matter how profound the formation was and how it could greatly increase everyone's fighting strength, there was still a limit to each person's true strength. How could the attacks of the 8 disciples of residents of 9 Supremes be so powerful? They were several times stronger than their own strength. How could they know that the key to this change was Sun Mingxiu, who was in the center of the 8 disciples? At this moment, Sun Mingxiu looked normal and stood still, but if one took a closer look, one would find that there was steam rising from his head, and his face was pale and bloodless. It turned out that in that moment just now he had borrowed all his mystical qi. That was why Yun Xiuxin and the other 7 disciples, with the added power of the formation, could unleash a palm strike that was far beyond their limit. The attack just now had shocked everyone, but it had also turned Sun Mingxiu into an empty shell. However, his effort was enough to lock down the outcome of the battle. At the right moment, the 8 disciples around Sun Mingxiu struck out with their maximum strength, and with the 50% increase in strength from the 9 peaks formation, they attacked the opponent's 7 stars battle formation. Yun Xiuxin took the lead and confronted Han Kongquan. Their swords collided violently. Han Kongquan was about to shout to show his existence and increase his momentum, but he felt the power of the attack from the opposite side pressing down on him like an avalanche, and the shout was forced back into his stomach. Knowing that the situation was not good, he mustered all his mystical qi to resist the attack with all his might. If he, who was in the main position, could not suppress the formation and took a step back, the 7 stars battle formation would be completely defeated. His response was undoubtedly correct, and he had given it his all without the slightest bit of negligence. However, what he was facing now was a tyrannical power that exceeded his limits. Even if he tried his best to hold on and even pushed back, blood was already gushing out of his 7 apertures. His situation was indescribably bleak. However, compared to the other members of the 7 stars battle formation, Han Kongquan was in the best condition. The other members of the formation were also facing the same level of power, and their fighting strength was obviously not as strong as Han Kongquan. Although Han Kongquan could still put up a desperate fight, the others did not even have the chance to put up a desperate fight. As a result, muffled grunts rang out incessantly in the surroundings. In just one blow, the 7 stars battle formation, which was full of confidence and claimed to be invincible, had suffered an unprecedented blow. Chapter 1086. The disciples of residents of 9 Supremes did not follow up with another attack. Instead, they retreated together, holding their swords in one hand to guard against the enemy's counterattack while putting the other hand on Sun Mingxiu. Then Sun Mingxiu let out a long chant and said, "The bright moon of the 5 lakes waves together." Before his voice had died away, Yun Xiuxin, Bai Yexing, Hu Xiaofan, Duanmu Feng, and Lin Xiaro suddenly crossed paths and pounced in the opposite direction of where they were. In an instant they had changed their targets and launched a new wave of attacks. Boom! Boom! 5 loud bangs rang out one after another. Through the first wave of battle, although Sun Mingxiu had exerted his qi to the limit to enhance the combat power of his senior brothers and junior brothers and was temporarily exhausted, his eyesight was not inferior at all. He immediately judged that among the 7 stars battle formation, Han Kongquan, who was in the main position of Migres, and another disciple of Thousand Mountains sect named Yu Heng were the strongest. Although he had used Yun Xiuxin and Bai Yexing, the strongest disciples, on his side, to attack them separately and gain some results, they were not able to achieve a full victory. Therefore, in the second round, they avoided the strong and attacked the weak, using the 5 stronger disciples on their side to attack the 5 weaker disciples on the other side. As for the 7 stars battle formation, because of the interconnecting effect of the formation, when one person was attacked, the others would share the burden and distribute the damage. In an instant, all 7 people in the 7 stars battle formation coughed up a mouthful of blood without exception. They had overloaded themselves, and once the formation backfired, all 7 of them would be injured at the same time. However, the advantages and disadvantages of the 2 waves of attacks were clear at a glance. The disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes used the attacking will of Sun Mingxiu, who was sitting in the middle, as the starting point. Their words were followed by their movements, and they attacked swiftly. Not only did each strike contain a force that was several times stronger than their own, but they also targeted the opponent's weak points and succeeded one after another. Although the 7 stars battle formation had its marvelous effect, it was too shabby to withstand a single blow from the residents of 9 Supremes' 9 Peaks formation. The 7 people who suffered the backfire of the formation staggered back at the same time. Han Kongquan roared desperately, trying to turn the tide, but it was already too late. It was just like a cornered dog jumping over a wall and talking nonsense. Sun Mingxiu stood up with lightning in his eyes and shouted 3 times, "Unify Jianghu and change the world." Then, the 9 of them quickly adjusted their formation and stood side by side. At the same time, they used the body and sword fusion technique. At this moment, the 9 sword lights were like 9 dragons swallowing water, shooting straight up into the sky for 500 feet. This kind of power could only be unleashed by a saint-level cultivator. Now, however, the sword lights of the 9 disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes were the same, advancing in unison. It was like 9 saints had attacked at the same time, and their momentum was shocking. This attack had combined the strength of all 9 people that formed the 9 Peaks Grand Formation into one spot, and then doubled their battle prowess. Only then was it able to form such a terrifying might. In the face of this wave of tyrannical attacks, the miserable cries from the other side had only just sounded before they disappeared. Only flesh and blood scattered all over the sky. On the other hand, after killing all their enemies, the 9 disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes rushed out of the square's battle formation at top speed with the momentum of the body and sword fusion technique. Along the way, they flew 3,000 feet across the sky and returned to the grandstand of the residents of 9 Supremes. The 9 disciples bowed at the same time and said respectfully, "Fortunately, we didn't fail you." There was only scattered flesh and blood on the ground. There was not even a single intact bone, and even the head had been smashed into pieces. Everyone was silent for a long time. All the people from the 8 sects were shocked by the joint attack of the 9 disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes and the brilliant sword light that shot 500 feet into the sky. The level of a saint. The 9 Peaks Grand Formation could actually elevate the strength of the 9 disciples of the residents of 9 Supremes to the level of a saint. Even Thousand Mountains sect, which had always been known for its formations, had ended up like this. How could the other sects deal with it? Compared to the 9 Peaks Grand Formation, the 7 stars battle formation was like the difference between heaven and earth. Someone murmured under his breath, "We are of the same breath and branch, a cold sword that sweeps through all directions. The bright moon of the 5 lakes waves together, unifying the martial world and changing the world." Residents of 9 Supremes? Residents of 9 Supremes? Du Yangfan's face was as pale as a dead man's at the moment. The other disciples of Thousand Mountains sect were also disheartened, as if they had lost their parents. They no longer looked as if everything was under their control. They had lost again. They had lost again. And they had lost in the battle that they were most confident of winning. In the field, the 7 disciples of the 7 stars battle formation had recovered because of the strange phenomenon, but their faces were pale and their eyes were full of fear. 2 or 3 of them were even trembling. The reason was that the battle just now had completely scared them out of their wits. This was hell. This was not the mortal world. Among them, the one who had the greatest reaction was none other than Han Kongquan. In the short span of an hour he had died twice. Although it wasn't a true death, the feeling of death was no different from reality. There wasn't the slightest bit of falsehood. His heart was filled with indignation and unwillingness after he was killed in the first battle. After he recovered, all he could think of was to find Yun Xiuxin for revenge. Although his state of mind was unbalanced, not only was his fighting strength not damaged, it had even become stronger because of his anger. However, the subsequent development was beyond his expectation. The Seven Stars battle formation, which he thought was his trump card, was completely crushed by his opponent. In just 3 waves of attacks, all of them were wiped out. He had thought of killing his opponent, but instead he was killed by his opponent. The gap between the two was so great that it could not be described with words. At this moment, he stood in the field in a daze, his body trembling, his eyes unfocused and empty as he murmured, "I'm dead. I'm dead again. I'm dead again." Suddenly he screamed and ran back with his hands over his head. "I'm dead, I'm dead. I'm dead again. I'm dead again." After losing his state of mind several times, he was so scared that he lost his mind. Du Yangfan heaved a long sigh and slapped Han Kongquan on the back, knocking him out immediately. Then he handed him over to the people behind him, turned around and said bitterly, "We've lost the match of formations." On the high platform, Hui Yunfeng's voice was also mournful as he said, "Residents of 9 Supremes won the second match." Then there was another long silence. Except for residents of 9 Supremes' own people who were celebrating, none of the other sects spoke a word. Even Golden Cauldron sect, which ranked first, was looking at residents of 9 Supremes with fear in their eyes. They had once thought that the opponent's weakness was not a weakness, but a very powerful trump card. Almost everyone felt a chill creeping up their backs. The 9 disciples of residents of 9 Supremes were either little girls or boys, and only a few of them could be called teenagers. Their age of cultivation was destined to be short, so their real strength was naturally not very high. No matter how talented they were limited by their age of cultivation, and there was a limit to their strength. However, the residents of 9 Supremes' 9 Peaks formation could forcibly raise their strength to the Saint Realm. The true might of this grand formation was obvious, and it was truly shocking, terrifying, and astounding. Then all the sects came to a decision. Now, the residents of 9 Supremes has even made up for its only shortcoming. If they climb all the way up later when it's our turn to face them, no matter what we do, we must not fight them in formations. Chapter 1087. Not only would they be courting death, but they would also ruin the future of their disciples by engaging in a battle of formations. The Thousand Mountains sect was a clear example of what had happened to them. Du Yangfan sat in a daze, feeling that his mind was completely blank. Next to him, Yunyang looked over with a smile and said, "Sect leader Du, it's time for the third match. How do you want to fight? Whether it's a battle of the backbone, a battle of free will, or some other tactics, residents of 9 Supremes is ready." Du Yangfan didn't know why, but when he heard these words he actually shuddered, and his hair stood on end. It was a fact that they had been defeated and discouraged, but the battle of the celestial banners was not over yet. It was clear that residents of 9 Supremes intended to continue, and it was not only to defeat Thousand Mountains sect, but also to achieve a higher goal. But how were they going to fight the third match? Now, the whole Thousand Mountains sect had clearly realized a problem. Residents of 9 Supremes was really stronger than Thousand Mountains sect, and it was much stronger, even superior in every aspect. Now, the 2 matches they had lost had proved this fact. The third match would undoubtedly become a battle of life and death. If they lost again, it meant that Thousand Mountains sect would fall to the last place among the lower-class celestial luck banners. It was a result that Thousand Mountains sect would not be happy to see, and it was even more difficult for them to accept. After all, for Thousand Mountains sect, the worst-case scenario would be 6 or at least 3 years later before their ranking would drop. But now it was right in front of them. They could not afford to lose this match. Even if they could not avoid defeat, as long as they won this match, residents of 9 Supremes would lose the qualification to continue challenging the higher-ranking sects with the celestial luck banners because it was not a complete victory, and they would be able to earn the final benefit. Unfortunately, the thoughts in his mind were one thing, and the reality was another. How could he win the third battle? How could they ensure their victory? Du Yangfan frowned, his mind in a mess. He turned to look at the black-clothed man beside him, who had been silent all this time. The man was his senior brother, Yang Ping, the first martial arts genius that Thousand Mountains sect claimed to have seen in 1,000 years. Not only was his cultivation base 2 levels higher than Wu Qi's, but he was even stronger than the elders in Thousand Mountains sect who had been cultivating in seclusion. Without a doubt, he was the strongest expert in Thousand Mountains sect. In other words, Yang Ping was the strongest trump card of Thousand Mountains sect, their ultimate trump card. In the past, he had purposely concealed this person's strength in case he needed to act at the critical moment to turn the tide of the battle. Could it be that he had no choice but to act now? Senior martial brother Yang, Du Yangfan sighed softly and said, In the next match, the match of the backbone, how about you fight? Thousand Mountains sect can't afford to lose again. We must at least win this match. Yang Ping was expressionless. He simply said, okay. Then he stood up. Du Yangfan's spirits lifted as he turned to Yun Yang and said, in the third match, the match of the backbone, my senior brother Yang Ping will fight. What do you think, Master Yun? Du Yangfan had to admit that Du Yangfan was the leader of a sect after all. Even though the enemy was already at the gate of the sect and the situation was full of crisis, he was still clinging to the last straw and trying to maximize the efficiency of this straw. There was a reason why Du Yangfan took the initiative to introduce Yang Ping's identity and seniority. Everyone present knew that Residence of Nine Supremes was seeking to win all 5 matches, and there was no doubt about it. On the other hand, most of the strongest fighters in a sect were the elders of the sect, and the sect leader was slightly weaker. Few people of the same generation as the sect leader were so strong that they could even surpass many of the sect's elders. The current situation was clear. Yun Yang was the strongest fighter in Residence of Nine Supremes, followed by Luo Dajiang. However, these 2 men would obviously be reserved for the free match and the strongest match in the future. If Shi Wuchen, who was the second strongest fighter in Residence of Nine Supremes, were to fight this match, Du Yangfan was confident that his sect would have a 100% chance of winning based on Shi Wuchen's previous performance. Yun Yang nodded and said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who fights this match. I've said it many times. So, are you still going to send Shi Wuchen, who fought the last match? Du Yangfan asked faintly. Yun Yang gave him a strange smile and said, of course not. Du Yangfan said good subconsciously, but he did not expect that the other party would say of course not. His words were stuck in his throat, and he felt like he had fallen into a pit. They are not sending Shi Wuchen? What? Isn't this the match of the backbone? Does Residence of Nine Supremes intend to send someone else to fight this match? An idea suddenly flashed across Du Yangfan's mind. I did not mention the match of sect leaders in this match, but the free match. Residents of Nine Supremes can certainly choose Luo Dajiang, who is stronger, to fight in the third match of Backbone, and Yun Yang himself will fight in the final match. Why not? Won't our chances of winning be higher this way? Du Yangfan asked himself. If it were him, he would never give up such a high chance of winning. However, if Luo Dajiang were to face Yang Ping, then their 100% chance of victory would plummet. Based on the battle prowess that Luo Dajiang had displayed, Yang Ping wasn't just not certain of victory. In fact, his chances of victory were minuscule. At this moment, Du Yangfan was so annoyed that he was about to go crazy. Yun Yang turned his head and said, brothers, who hasn't fought yet? Who else wants to join the match? Me. Tai Ching-tsang, Ren Qingquang, Kong Luo Yue, and the others immediately became excited and scrambled to join the match. On the opposite side, Yang Ping raised his eyes, and a cold gleam flashed across them. Du Yangfan was also startled. Hope reappeared in his eyes, but there were still many temptations and puzzlement in them. This is a battle, a crucial battle for the position of the sect. It is a fact that Residence of Nine Supremes has won all the battles, and it is understandable that you can be very aggressive. But why are you randomly sending someone to fight at this critical juncture? Looking at these people shouting and playing rock paper scissors to decide who should go, Du Yangfan's eyes were burning with anger. How arrogant. They are too arrogant. Ha ha ha. With a long laugh, Tai Ching-tsang flew out and landed in the ring, throwing his head back and roaring with laughter. I've won. Ha ha. Kong Luo Yue, who was standing opposite him and about to throw a punch, was dumbfounded. Then his face filled with anger. I haven't even started playing rock paper scissors with you. How did you win? I've worked so hard and schemed to get into the finals, and just when I was about to fight for the last time, you just jumped out. You've won? When did you King win? Tai Ching-tsang. I can't believe a thick-browed, big-eyed guy like you is so despicable and shameless. Kong Luo Yue was filled with grief and indignation. Next to him, Ren Qingquang and the others were laughing so hard that they almost fell. No one had expected that Tai Ching-tsang, who had always been honest, would have such a shameless side to him, and he did it openly without hiding it. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.